Chapter 1549. Ha! Do you think you have the right to speak here? Jiang Tian waved his fingers and slashed in the air, directly destroying her body and soul. Even her golden core was shattered. How dare you! Su Ruoming's face was still full of shock and fear before she died. She had never thought that Jiang Tian would be so powerful that he would still dare to kill her under the threat of 3 soul formation cultivators. The 3 soul formation grand cultivators didn't even change their expressions and didn't try to stop him, as if Su Ruoxue was just an ant. Her death in Jiang Tian's hands wasn't worth mentioning at all. In fact, at their level, their hearts were as tough as iron and they were already different from ordinary people. Life was just like grass in their eyes. A battle between soul formation cultivators would affect the whole situation. They were only thinking about how to kill Jiang Tian. They didn't care about the life and death of the others at all. It would be a great loss if they were exposed during the process of rescuing Su Ruoxue and were severely injured by Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian looked at Su Ruoxue and flicked his fingers. Who in this world can afford to kneel and surrender? I'm going to kill you today. I'll let the ruins of deity know that I can kill 1 soul formation cultivator and 3 soul formation cultivators. I'll still kill them as usual. How arrogant of you! The black and white stones' expressions turned cold as they suddenly raised their heads. A black ghost stone flew out from the go board, heading towards Jiang Tian. Boom! This chess piece enlarged in the wind, and it was actually a gloomy meteor that was 3 kilometers in diameter. It contained the essence of the moon, and it was extremely rich with yin energy and emanated clear radiance. It crushed space to the point it shattered, and it smashed down from the sky. Today, I'll sacrifice your blood to my sacred sword. The sword servant on the sword roared. The scabbard on his back made a noise and his sword jumped out. The 3-foot sword immediately turned into a long river made of long sword Dharma laws. It contained the fragments of the Grand Tao and was full of Taoist connotation. It slashed towards Jiang Tian. Controlling objects, seal of 10,000 mountains. Na Banshan shouted. As his thick and strong fingers moved nimbly, the tall mountains rose from the ground as if they were alive, forming a mountain formation. Waves of earth vein energy gushed out. They were as thick as dragons, crisscrossing in all directions like iron chains that stretched across the sky, wanting to trap Jiang Tian. The area within a radius of 10 miles instantly turned into a hopeless situation. Not good. Retreat. Seeing this, Cheng Aojuan, Su Changqing, and the others all turned pale with fright. They all stepped on their flying swords and quickly retreated, rushing out of the circle. Let's go too. When the war of the gods begins, we are like ants in it. They'll be torn apart by the shockwaves in an instant. Zhao Shanhe complained incessantly as he flew into the cloud tower. Many cloud tower warships formed a torrent that shuttled through the earth vein dragon and the sword chi laws. Go! Jiang Ni's beautiful face turned pale. She used her teleportation ability and brought the many female disciples of the academy with her. She flew outside in a panic like a stray dog. It was safe to say that the 3 semi-god realm warriors were all masters of killing. They were cold and merciless. They only wanted to kill Jiang Tian and didn't care about the lives of the others. Rumble. Sharp blades crossed the sky, killing everything. The earth vein energy was heavy and crazily erased everything. The chess pieces and meteorites also created violent wind that tore the sky apart. The aftermath was earth-shattering. Senior, wait. We haven't escaped yet. Screams came one after another. Dozens of female cultivators of the academy were affected by the attacks. Their blood dyed the sky red as they died. Their bodies fell like rain and exploded. Even their golden cores and divine souls were destroyed. Bang! A cloud tower exploded and a giant mushroom cloud rose. Many cultivators of the Tianmong Grotto heaven were killed. Su Changqing was affected by the sword chi of the sword servant. One of his arms was directly cut off and he fled with a huge string of blood. Kong Teichu, you should be honored that the 2 chancellors of the academy and the sword god's servant worked together to kill you. This has never happened before in the ruins of deity. But the 3 semi-god realm warriors didn't even look at him. They just unleashed their divine powers and attacked Jiang Tian crazily. Humph! You don't have the right to fight with me. Jiang Tian stood proudly in the sky and endured the violent attacks of the 3 semigod realm warriors at the same time. However, he didn't even change his expression. Instead, he was at ease. The heavy earth vein energy, the overwhelming sword auras and the moonlight of the meteorites immediately turned into a calm stream when they were a mile away from him. There wasn't even a trace of energy around him. He had firmly blocked them with the sea-calming ice god law. All of a sudden, he waved his sleeves and the Kuanpeng law enveloped Long Xingnan, Ghost Wolf, and the others. They pierced through the earth vein energy, the sword auras and the light of the meteorites like arrows and flew 100 miles away. So powerful! The 3 semigod realm overlords trembled and they couldn't believe it. Jiang Tian was surrounded by the divine powers of the 3 semigod realm warriors. Normal semigod realm warriors couldn't even move their little fingers even if they wanted to move. However, Jiang Tian had used the Kuanpeng's laws to break open space with a wave of his sleeve, sending the servants out. This was truly unbelievable. The 3 of them only felt that Jiang Tian, who had been tightly restrained by the Dharma restrictions, had hit the weakest part of their restrictions with a wave of his sleeve. It was like the array eye of the array or the Achilles heel of the iron skin technique. Jiang Tian waved his sleeves and the Kuanpeng law broke the weakest part of their restrictions, forcing them to step back and take the initiative. Damn it! We can't let him do that. The 3 divine lords were so upset that they almost vomited blood. Swish! The sword servant took back the sword. Black and white pieces grabbed the sword and Mountain Move cut off the connection with the mountains. We have to use our full strength. This guy is too powerful. We have to kill him in this world no matter what. We can't let the flames of war spread to the ruins of deity. This is an order from the Emperor of the Ruins of Deity. The 3 of them looked at each other and communicated with their divine minds. You're courting death. You provoked the ruins of deity and invaded our territory. That's unforgivable. Ban Shan roared as his eyes widened in anger. He took a step into the air and flew towards Jiang Tian. He raised the gigantic hammer on his shoulder high and smashed it down. The hammer was made of some unknown precious metal. It had a sliver of chaos aura, as though it was a divine artifact. In fact, the gigantic hammer was indeed extraordinary. He had once used it to forge asteroids and countless Tao artifacts. Its strength was unimaginable. Wherever the gigantic hammer passed, golden Tao charms emanated. The sound of the great Tao reverberated as bolts of lightning lingered like dragons. The grand yang essence fire spewed out, shattering and collapsing the void as everything within 50 kilometers trembled. With a loud boom, the ground beneath the gigantic hammer cracked, forming a deep crater that spanned 5 kilometers. Mountains that spanned 100,000 feet collapsed one after another. The heaven and earth within 500 kilometers were affected. It was as though a hurricane had passed through, reducing countless trees to dust. In the end, even more mountain peaks collapsed. Rubble pierced through the sky, and the entire boundless mountain range shook. The mountain ridges rose and fell like waves, as if a great earthquake had erupted. Black and White Child roared. The black and white chess pieces floating around him suddenly transformed into black and white chi. They spun in front of him like yin and yang fish, evolving into yin and yang. Following that, with a tap of the air, the black and white chi transformed into a shocking rainbow. It spun at high speeds like a top as it charged towards Jiang Tian. The yin and yang chi were derived from the great Tao of the chessboard. They were soft yet firm, extremely tough and sharp. One day, when he could refine the yin and yang chi into chaos, returning from Taiji to infinity, he would have cultivated the divine power to its peak. When that happened, a single strike could reduce everything within a radius of thousands of kilometers to dust. It could even encompass an entire continent. At that moment, although Black and White Child had yet to cultivate it to its peak, they were already extraordinary. The black and white chi were extremely fast, even slicing through space. Clang! Finally, it was the sword servant's turn to attack. The sword servant of the ruins emperor's palace's sword god had a stern expression as he flicked his finger. An incomparably dazzling, dragon-like lightning sword beam shot out from his hand. It instantly traversed a distance of 10 miles and arrived in front of Jiang Tian. That sword was so powerful that even divine Emperor Hanshi would be moved by it. The nomological laws and great Tao fragments were completely contained. They were silent and only exploded within 3 meters. They were aimed at hitting Jiang Tian precisely without any wastage. Wherever the blade passed, the space cracked inch by inch and was annihilated into a pure void. The torrent of space flowed backwards and could easily destroy divine treasures. Even Ghost Wolf with his air-piercing blade couldn't break through the attraction of the torrent of space. He would be instantly devoured. The 3 experts who had descended from the ruins of immortality and gathered here to set up a peerless killing trap finally attacked with all their might. Moreover, they attacked with all their might, not giving Jiang Tian any way out. They wanted to eliminate all future troubles. How terrifying was that soul formation overlord's power when he attacked? The vast Penglai world resonated with the great Tao of heaven and earth. It was rumbling and shaking. Natural disasters such as hurricanes, thunderbolts, and rainstorms arrived. Even geomagnetism and stellar storms suddenly erupted. The mountain range and the entire world were in chaos. The sun and the moon hung upside down, as if they were about to collapse. He's too powerful. Is this the power of a soul formation grand cultivator? Cheng Aojuan, Su Changqing, and the others kept retreating. They had already retreated 300 miles away, but they could still feel the powerful energy waves and pressure. They were already elites and elites among the younger generation in the ruins of immortality. It was easy for them to destroy cities and mountains with one attack. And yet He Banshan's every move was too powerful, as if the world was about to be destroyed. A casual attack was enough to smash them into meat paste. In fact, the sword servant is more powerful. His control of the great Tao fragments and Dharma laws has already reached the peak. Cheng Aojuan commented. Normal soul formation cultivators could shake 10,000 miles and move mountains and seas with one attack. Their power was indeed shocking. However, their power was too scattered. It was like throwing 100 punches might not be able to kill a person. But the sword servant was different. He gathered all the great Tao and Dharma laws within a 3-meter radius. The Dharma laws of swords in that area were extremely thick and boiling like an ocean. There were even great Tao fragments floating and spinning. They were extremely condensed. It was like concentrating all the power on a bullet, which could kill with one shot, leaving the enemy with no chance to fight back. The disciples of the headmaster of the academy and the servants of the sword god all have the power to move mountains and seas and pick up stars and moons. Ban Shan is powerful and his body is strong. He's the best at close combat and his giant hammer even contains a great Tao fragment. Black and white qi, the cycle of yin and yang, life and death, hardness and softness. The sword servant can control the great Tao fragment at will. Kong Teichu is still far from being able to do that. Jiang and I snickered and there was a look of longing in her eyes. Chapter 1550. The others, including Princess Tingyu, were also looking forward to it. For those cultivators who had been stuck at the nascent soul level for hundreds of years, becoming a soul formation cultivator was their only goal. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken such a huge risk to explore the mysterious ancient treasures. Attracting Kong Teichu was part of their plan. They wanted to find the ancient treasures and improve their power. Too powerful. Too powerful. Kong Teichu is dead. Jiang and I mumbled to herself and her eyes glittered. Even though they were a few hundred miles apart, Jiang and I still trembled when she saw the giant hammer that seemed to be able to crush the world, the black and white qi that seemed to be born from chaos and the sword aura that shattered the dimension. A sense of satisfaction rose in her heart. Jiang Tian had killed her beloved Prince Chunyu and forced her to kneel this time, which made this princess of the northern Liang world, who had surrendered to the ruins of deity, hold a grudge against him. Boom! Facing the giant hammer surrounded by thunderbolts and heavenly fire, the yin and yang qi and the sword aura that contained the power of the grand Tao, Chen Fan's expression became serious. Jiang Tian's eyes revealed an unprecedentedly serious expression. His dantian suddenly rumbled, and a 3-meter-long divine disc appeared behind him in a dazzling manner. Break! Jiang Tian stepped forward and dodged the sword servant's sword aura. He then got rid of the suction force formed by the dimension with the Kunpeng speed law. He clenched his fist and the divine plate flashed and all of it was infused into his jade-like fist. Then he threw a punch. Boom! That punch was more powerful than a normal soul formation cultivator's. There was actually the aura of primal chaos circulating around it. It was peerlessly powerful, and it crushed space to the point it was like numerous black holes. Clang! The forging hammer was actually sent flying, and Ban Shan himself was carried by the hammer like a spinning top, spinning at high speed in the air and quickly flying backwards. But he was flying slower and slower. Even though his clothes and hair were a bit messy, he didn't seem to have been hurt at all. Instead, he drew a giant arc in the air with the power of Jiang Tian's punch and struck again. At the same time, the black and white chi were also rapidly approaching. Jiang Tian snorted and reached his right hand into the void, shaking it lightly. With a ripping sound, the void was torn apart. The green lotus golden lotus blossomed with boundless treasure light and appeared in Jiang Tian's hand. Clang! Jiang Tian casually waved his hand, and the green lotus golden lotus split the void with streaks of destructive light, striking the black and white chi. He can't break it. You will suffer a backlash, and even the colorful plate on your back will shatter. Seeing this, Jiang Ni coldly harumphed with disdain. The black and white pieces sat on the chessboard as steadily as Mount Tai, revealing a strong sense of mockery. Kong Teichu, you're too arrogant. This black chess piece was refined from a dark meteorite from the depths of the starry sky. It was extremely dark, and lifeless. As for the white chess pieces, they were condensed from the energy of the solar storm particles. They were extremely masculine and full of vitality. The two were combined into one and refined for 3,000 years to form a set of black and white chess pieces. It had all the laws of life and death that the black and white pieces had merged with. It was made with laws as the chain and the Tao of life and death as the foundation. Even soul formation and divine lords would die if they were entangled by the black and white chi. Really? Then you can try. Jiang Tian grunted with arrogance in his eyes. The green lotus golden lotus continued to attack and the chaotic energy spread, clashing with the black and white chi. Bang! There was an earth-shattering explosion. Everyone was shocked when they saw that. The golden lotus petals were shot in all directions and the white chi dragon was torn to pieces like paper. The green lotus leaves and branches were like a black hole in the universe, swallowing the black chi dragon crazily. No! At this moment, the black and white pieces shook violently and almost spurted out blood. They roared together with the entities in the divine treasures, shaking the world. He hurriedly formed a hand seal to retrieve the black and white chi. When the two kinds of energy turned into chess pieces and returned to him, he was shocked to see that all the white chi dragons had disappeared. All of the white chess pieces were cracked and dimmed, and half of the black chess pieces were swallowed by Jiang Tian's green lotus golden lotus. So powerful! The black and white pieces suddenly realized what had happened. They were so shocked that the muscles in the corners of their eyes trembled crazily. This little bastard used the killing law to break my white chi chess piece and the green leaves to create the life law to swallow the death chi black chess piece. His attack also contained the life and death law. However, he's just a dharma law. How can he break my Tao? But then, the dharma laws and fragments of dharma laws of Ban Shan and the sword servant had come back and attacked crazily again. Clang, clang. Jiang Tian performed the Kunpeng speed and broke through the air. He dodged the silver snake-like fragments of the sword Tao and fought with Ban Shan continuously. The sword servant's Tao laws weren't much more powerful than Ban Shan's. But they were very condensed and their power was restrained. Once they exploded, they could easily kill a normal soul formation cultivator. Jiang Tian couldn't touch them easily, so there was no need to take the risk. His strategy was to defeat them one by one and kill Ban Shan first. Clang! When Jiang Tian collided with Ban Shan's giant hammer for the 5th time, He felt that Ban Shan's power seemed to be much stronger than before. He recalled that every time he attacked, his power was even stronger than before. Borrowing power? Jiang Tian frowned slightly. Ban Shan was sent flying like a spinning top by Jiang Tian again, but he took the opportunity to draw a huge arc in the air again. He was surrounded by thunderbolts and divine flames. He kept releasing a small part of Jiang Tian's fist power into the air and merged most of it into the giant hammer, which smashed forward with a thunderous force. 1 hammer. 2 hammers. 3 hammers. Jiang Tian punched again 10 times, and Ban Shan hit back 10 times. And each hammer was fiercer than the previous one. The last hammer was almost 10 times more powerful than the first one. It seemed to be able to shatter stars. Clang. But when the fist collided with the giant hammer for the last time, Jiang Tian looked bitter and quickly retreated. The divine disc behind him seemed to have dimmed a little, and his face was as pale as paper. The Dian Law. This is the Dian Law created by the headmaster. It can instantly deprive others of their power and laws and turn them into his own. Cheng Aojuan exclaimed. If the headmaster hadn't been born, the ruins of immortality would have been like a long night. The headmaster of the academy was a brilliant, eclectic, and brilliant sage. Back then his disciple Yan Hua had touched 10 kinds of laws and successfully controlled 4 of them, which gave the headmaster a lot of inspiration. They worked together to create the Dian Law. With this Dao Law, one's potential could be stimulated and completely comprehended. One could control billions of laws and be infinitely close to the Great Dao, greatly increasing the probability of becoming a soul formation cultivator. This was the first stage of the development of the Dian Law. In recent years, the headmaster had created the second part of the Dian Law. In short, the second part of the Dian Law could borrow other people's true essence, qi, blood, and the great Dao of laws and turn them into his own power and laws. His attacks would be stronger than the previous one. If he mastered this Dao Law, he could kill people above his level. Theoretically speaking, even if a nascent soul cultivator fought against a soul formation cultivator, as long as he could withstand 100 attacks without dying, he could kill a soul formation cultivator above his level. It's a very advanced law. Such a Dao Law is close to the great Dao of heaven and earth. Even Jiang Tian sighed. This Grand Chancellor Ban Shan's magic power, martial techniques, and corporeal body were all extremely strong. His corporeal body was especially strong, allowing him to withstand over 10 punches from Qin Mu. That was why he could use Great Evolution Dao Law to transform and use Qin Mu's attacks. Even if Jiang Tian only used his fists, it was already terrifying enough. It could be said that this Dian Law was very suitable for him. It was as if it was tailor-made for him. But this is the end. If my punch is 10 times or 100 times stronger, can you withstand it? Jiang Tian sneered. He slowly retracted his fist at his waist. The golden divine disc behind him suddenly dimmed and shrank to a third of its original size. In the end, it completely disappeared. The next moment, Jiang Tian punched out. Heaven and earth were in chaos. The wind whistled and a 10-mile space tunnel was created. Gung Metal Divine Fist. The Gung Metal Divine Fist was originally a peerless divine power that was activated after the Gung Metal Divine Body transcended into the Gung Metal Immortal Body. Strictly speaking, it didn't belong to the human world at all. It belonged to the celestial world, and its power was extremely terrifying. Even if at this time, several kinds of Jedon in Jiang Tian's divine disc had reached the peak, but to make a full blow, he had to use the Super Divine 9 transformation technique to forcibly transform the other kinds of true essence coefficients into the 7th metal true essence. Boom! With this punch, a golden light that penetrated the heavens and the earth appeared between heaven and earth. Everything within a 10,000-mile radius trembled. The mountains within 1,000 miles all collapsed and trembled as the fist energy passed by. Block it. Ban Shan, be careful. Seeing the power of this punch, black and white chi flew out with the life and death laws as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Before Jiang Tian's fist energy really arrived, a Tai Chi Yin and Yang shield was formed between Jiang Tian and Ban Shan. Open. Ban Shan's figure retreated like a dragon. He suddenly widened his bell-like eyes and gritted his teeth with a crazy expression. Obviously, he also knew that it was the most critical time. As he shouted, small stones flew out from his storage bag. They turned into huge meteorites. Some had even reached the level of a small planet. They were at least 100 miles wide and filled the void. Clang. The Tai Chi Yin and Yang shield shattered. The god in black and white sun's body roared to the sky. The world felt it. Thunder exploded and lead clouds gathered. His god had already cracked. Hundreds of meteorites scattered and exploded. The world was in chaos. Ban Shan was punched. His bones and tendons were broken. There was a huge pit in his chest. His body was covered in blood and his divine treasures were cracked. He flew more than 10 miles away. Jiang Tian's eyes were cold and he was about to kill him. Not only did Ban Shan not look painful, but he also sneered and said, "Kong Teichu, you've fallen into my trap. You're dead." Galaxy Space Lock. Jiang Tian was stunned and thought, "Oh no." All of a sudden, countless meteorites and small planets let out endless light and Dharma laws, intertwining into a net and enveloping Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian felt as if he had fallen into 10,000 mountains and couldn't break free at all. A domain. Jiang Tian realized that Ban Shan had collected countless meteorites and small planets and refined them into a starry sky array, which contained the fragments of the Grand Tao and formed a domain unique to Soul Formation Grand Cultivators to trap him. He had just scattered countless meteorites and planets not to resist, but to form an array and a domain. Oh no! Jiang Tian's heart sank. He quickly took back all the true essence of Gung metal and split it into 9 kinds of true essence. The divine plate behind him shone brightly and kept expanding. Jiang Tian only needed a flick of his finger to restore the Kunpeng laws to the peak state and break the space forcefully. However, in a battle between soul formation overlords, the other party was enough to completely kill Jiang Tian in a blink of an eye. Too late. You can't escape. The sword servant chuckled. Crack. 3 meters behind Jiang Tian, in the air, a sword light suddenly appeared out of nowhere. It was almost impossible to describe the sharpness and speed of the sword with words. It was like an antelope hanging its horn, or an elephant crossing a river, as it pierced through Jiang Tian's body. Chapter 1551. Even the sword servant himself was aware of it. That was the most powerful slash he had ever made in his life. He had truly reached the highest level of sword Tao, where his sword was unpredictable. It could be said that there were only a handful of soul formation grand cultivators in the ruins of deity who could make such a terrifying slash. Jiang Tian had pushed the 10-foot divine disc to its limit and turned it into 7th metal true essence. He hadn't had time to retrieve it and break it down, so he couldn't use the Kunpeng laws. He was also locked down by the Galaxy Space Locking Array. He was in a desperate situation at the moment. Senior. Master. Use the Heavenly Sword. At this moment, Ghost Wolf and Ao Tian Swordmaster exclaimed. Long Shengnan and Bai Muxue even had tears in their eyes. Kong Teichu is dead meat. Jiang and I and the others burst into laughter. Long Shengnan, Ghost Wolf, you've betrayed the Emperor of the Ruins. You'll be punished later. Princess Tingyu and the Tianmong Grotto Heavens Zongzi, Zhao Shanhe, looked at Ghost Wolf and Long Shengnan with murderous intent. The sword servant's sword laws contained fragments of the sword Tao. It was even more powerful and was comparable to an attack from a peak stage soul formation cultivator. Jiang Tian had used up all his energy and hadn't recovered yet. He was at his weakest state and was completely at the mercy of others. While everyone was screaming, they saw the sword aura of the Dharma laws pierce the divine disc behind Jiang Tian and the power of the fragments of the Grand Tao burst out. The divine disc was penetrated by the sword aura. With the wound as the center, dense cracks spread like a spider web and covered the entire disc in the blink of an eye. Rumble. The fragments of the Grand Tao contained in the sword aura exploded at the same time. Dharma laws surged like an ocean and immediately covered the 10-foot divine disc and Jiang Tian's body. They wrapped around Jiang Tian like a crystal cocoon and killed him crazily. Without the Kunpeng's laws supporting him, Jiang Tian was unable to struggle free in the slightest. His body shattered, and numerous blood-colored cracks appeared on his body. One of his arms miserably exploded, causing divine blood to spray out and dye the sky red, revealing his sparkling and translucent divine bones. Jiang Tian raised his head and roared. His hair fluttered in the wind like a waterfall. Tears of blood rolled down his cheeks as divine light shot out from his eyes. He was filled with unwillingness, anger, battle intent, and murderous intent. Of course, he was unwilling to give up. He followed the path of his predecessors and traveled 40,000 light-years to arrive at a foreign galaxy. He went through untold hardships and disregarded life and death, all for the sake of reclaiming his homeland and avenging the ancient grudge. He wanted to one day drive a long chariot through the ruins of immortality. He wanted to feast on the flesh of the barbarians and drink the blood of the ruins' emperor. He wanted to sweep away all enemies and plant the foundation of Earth for all eternity. And now, the revenge from the ancient times had yet to be avenged, and the fate of Earth was still unknown. But he was killed by 3 semi-god realm cultivators working together. How could he accept this? How could he not be angry? This sword light was extremely sharp and pierced through Jiang Tian's body and dantian, flying out with a spray of blood. In an instant, Jiang Tian's aura plummeted once again. On the divine disk, the light that had been slowly recovering suddenly stopped and dimmed. Kong Teichu, you're indeed talented. If you were given another 10 years, no, maybe a year, you would have successfully entered the nascent soul level. Your divine power and cultivation art are extraordinary. You can kill semi-god realm cultivators when you're just a golden core cultivator. Once you enter the nascent soul level, even our masters, the sword god and Lord Tianhe, will be afraid of you. Even though Ban Shan was complimenting him, his rough face was already as cold as iron and the viciousness in his bell-like eyes was extremely strong. He didn't care about the blood flowing out of the wound on his chest. He quickly cast spells with his hands and formed a domain with the galaxy space lock array. The space turned into an iron block and firmly locked Jiang Tian's body. He said coldly, "Unfortunately, you're too aggressive, too bold, and too arrogant. You don't know how to hide your strength and defend yourself. You've exposed yourself too early. There's no way you can win against 3 semi-god realm cultivators today. You can only die here with regret. Ban Shan, Black, White, and Sword Servant, if you can't kill me today, I, Kong Teichu, swear that I'll cut you into pieces one day." Jiang Tian gritted his teeth and shouted. Flames of hatred shot out from his eyes. He swayed his body and activated all kinds of divine bodies and dharma laws. The phantoms of Gengjin Immortal God, Thunder Mantis, Sea Calming Ice God, True Fire Vermilion Bird, Origin Returning Taotai and Kun Peng flashed across the sky, trying to break free. Crack crack. The domain formed by the Galaxy Space Lock Array began to collapse and the colorful starlight laws were broken. Jiang Tian seemed to be able to break free from the starlight laws and the Great Tao. How is this possible? Ban Shan was shocked. His body shook violently and he shouted, his disc-shaped golden core is already full of cracks, and his physical body is also broken. How can he still break through my galaxy space lock domain? Black-White, do it? I'm coming. At this moment, Black and White Child had already recovered to their peak state after a period of recovery. Hearing this, they formed a hand seal, and the black and white cheese transformed into a yin-yang tai chi diagram in the sky. It contained the great Tao of life and death, and it covered the sky and covered the earth. It pounced down and enveloped Jiang Tian's entire surroundings, then transformed into a huge black and white ball. Even with the Galaxy Space Lock Array, they could at least see Jiang Tian's figure. But then, they could only vaguely see wisps of golden light, black light, flames, and thunderbolts. A flying sword slashed out from time to time, but the black and white chi kept circulating and couldn't be truly cut off. In the end, even the golden light, black light, thunderbolts, and flames couldn't be seen. Jiang Tian was completely sealed inside. Then, the sword servant's hands trembled and his face turned pale. He seemed to be struggling to make a sword spell and shouted, "Kong Teichu, this is the last attack. It's time to end it. There was a whoosh. The sword light condensed the great Tao fragments and appeared out of thin air again like an electric dragon. It broke through the air and stabbed towards Jiang Tian in the black and white chi ball. You can't kill me! An angry roar came from the black and white ball. There was a whoosh. An ancient sword with a simple design, dull and lusterless, as if it didn't have the slightest fluctuation of laws, suddenly stabbed out of the black and white ball, half of the sword's blade emerging. Then it slashed in the air. With a whoosh, the Dharma laws and great Tao of the galaxy space lock array, the black and white chi, the great Tao of yin and yang, and even the great Tao sword light of the sword servant disintegrated in an instant. It was even to the extent that many asteroids exploded like giant firecrackers and were annihilated and dissipated in the air. How is this possible? Ban Shan said in disbelief as he spat out a mouthful of blood after the destruction of the galaxy space lock array. At this moment, Cheng Aojuan, Zhao Shanhe, Princess Tingyu and even Jiang and I were terrified and full of disbelief. They didn't expect Jiang Tian to still have the power to break free from the domain. It's the heaven-severing sword. It's the heaven-severing sword of Emperor Shenzhong Li, the heaven-severing sword of the heaven-severing sword. Black and white chess retreated together with the chessboard and said angrily, "This kid is only a golden core cultivator, but he can activate the heaven-severing sword." The heaven-severing sword was a deity artifact. Strictly speaking, it didn't belong to this world. It was born in the Dharma laws of the deity realm and contained the Dharma laws or great Tao of the deity realm. Once it was activated, even a wisp of it could break normal Dharma laws or even saint-level Dharma laws. It could even easily destroy the great Tao of the lower worlds. Come, let's fight. At this time, Jiang Tian took a step out of the billowing dust. He held the sword in his hand. Although the divine disc on his back was dim and cracked, his body was shattered, revealing his bones and organs, and his entire body was drenched in blood. His clothes were ragged, and he seemed to be in a sorry state. His aura still surged into the heavens. He was like a peerless immortal king that had descended into the mortal world. His energy has weakened. Even with this deity artifact, he won't be able to activate it for long. Kill him and this deity artifact will belong to us. The sword servant stared at the old sword in Jiang Tian's hand with greed in his eyes, like a hungry ghost seeing delicious food. Deity artifacts, even refined ones, had never appeared in the ruins of deity, not to mention the heaven-severing sword, which was a natural deity artifact. In the eyes of the sword servant, the heaven-severing sword was as precious as half of the ruins of deity. It was a peerless weapon. However, what he said about killing Chen Fan and taking his treasures made sense. 4 golden core, nascent soul and soul formation cultivators, deity artifacts were like children facing missiles or nuclear weapons. They were extremely complicated and difficult to control. They would have to use all their strength and think hard to activate them once. At this moment, he ought to take advantage of the time when Jiang Tian was injured and weak to not let him off. He ought to beat him up while he was down and completely annihilate him so as to eliminate all future troubles and seize his treasures. Of course. Kill him. While Ban Shan and Black and White Chess were energized and were about to rush forward and cut Jiang Tian into pieces, suddenly, clang, a giant pair of crocodile scissors appeared out of thin air and cut towards the 3 of them. The teeth of the scissors were like peerless heavenly swords. Each of them was sharp and there were fragments of the great Tao around them. They tore through the air with endless power. Gongming, one of the 7 great ancestors. Why did this old man come to the mortal world? Ban Shan and the other 2 were shocked. They used their own unique skills. Dharma laws boiled, great Tao fragments rumbled, sword auras burst out, black and white chess pieces flew, giant hammers swung and meteorites flew across the sky, clashing with the crocodile scissors. The 2 sides fought dozens of times in the blink of an eye, breaking the air and collapsing mountains. An area of dozens of miles was instantly razed to the ground. Although the 3 of them were very powerful, they were still forced to retreat by the scissors. Cold sweat came out of their foreheads and they complained. Ban Shan was even sent flying dozens of miles by the scissors. He spat out blood and his bones were broken again. Suddenly, An ancient existence that was hundreds of feet tall appeared out of thin air and blocked Jiang Tian behind him. With a wave of his hand, the crocodile scissors shrunk and fell into his hand. This old man had a crocodile head and a human body. His bloody mouth emitted a thick smell of blood, and his pair of golden vertical pupils were very cold. He was wearing a rusty and worn-out armor, a waistcoat and shorts. His exposed skin was covered with hard scales, and there were terrifying bone spikes on his back. He had webbed feet, and he was stepping on turbid water. His 9 steel whip-like tails poked out of the round holes in his shorts, swinging back and forth. He looked like a demon or a god, terrifying beyond compare. At this time, he didn't reveal his golden core Dharma form or nascent soul Dharma form. It was his original body, but he was hundreds of feet tall. It was really terrifying. The mighty old man was actually very thin. His ribs were like steep mountain peaks, and he was all skin and bones. His aura was a little weak, but his strength was still shocking. These 3 old fogies bullied the weak with their numbers. How evil! If you have the guts, fight with me. He glared and shouted. His voice was like a great bell that shook the air. Lead clouds rolled and thunder exploded within 1,000 miles. Chapter 1552. Even though they were hundreds of miles away, Zhao Shanhe, Cheng Aojuan, and the rest were still vomiting blood from the impact. They fell to the ground like toads, unable to get up. Why is he here? Only Jiang and I could barely hold on as he protected Princess Chunyu. However, he still felt terrible and was on the verge of collapsing. His face was pale from fright. Once this old fiend takes action, Senior Grand Primordium will be safe. At the very least, he can keep his life. Ghost Wolf and Long Shengnan revealed a look of ecstasy. Senior Ghost Wolf, who is he? By Mushue and Sword Venerable Outyin had never seen him before and were shocked. This is an existence that gives the Ruins Emperor's Palace and the Academy a huge headache. Ghost Wolf smiled sinisterly, but there was a tinge of fear deep in his eyes. Igong Ming. He was a veteran soul formation cultivator who had experienced the age of Dao damage. He was once famous and was a peerless general under the Ao Emperor. He had once fought the Ruins Emperor and teacher and survived hundreds of battles. He was known as a living fossil. He was the only surviving heavenly crocodile god among the many heavenly masters and heavenly generals of the ancient heavenly courts. Later on, he led the remnants of the ancient heavenly courts and their descendants to rise to power, becoming one of the 7 famous pirate families. It was a huge headache for the Ruins Emperor's Palace and the Academy. Senior Yi Gongming, His Majesty, the Academy's teacher, Heavenly River Star Lord, and His Excellency Sword God all hold your talent in high esteem. The sword servant's eyes flickered as his expression turned solemn, as though he was facing a great enemy. He forced a laugh and guided him patiently. You are a beauty, so why did you become a thief? You're already so old, occupying a mountain and calling yourself king, raiding and robbing. Every day is precarious, yet you're still trembling in fear. What's the point? Why don't you turn over a new leaf and submit to the ruins of Immortality Dynasty with us? You can be a general and enjoy the prosperity of the world, enjoying endless cultivation resources. If I were a spineless coward who only craves for pleasure, I would have submitted 10,000 years ago. Why would I wait until now? Igong Ming grabbed Jiang Tian and placed him on his shoulder. He laughed arrogantly and said, if you 3 kids know when to back off, I won't make things difficult for you. By the way, pass a message to teacher and the Ruins Emperor. I'm about to blow their heads off. It's fine if you don't retreat. This old man's crocodile beak scissors haven't eaten humans for a long time, and it's long been unable to endure the thirst. Today, I'll drink your blood to my heart's content. You only have 3 seconds to think about it. What should we do? The sword servant, Ban Shan, and Black and White exchanged glances, and they saw the deep unwillingness and worry in each other's eyes. Originally, Kong Teichu was already heavily injured and exhausted. Even if he had the absolute heaven sword, he could still be killed in a matter of seconds. However, Igong Ming suddenly interfered. If they wanted to kill Jiang Tian, It could be said that it was very difficult. What they were more worried about was the alliance between Jiang Tian and the 7 great pirate families. It was like a rope that was easy to cut, but when many ropes were twisted together, it would be very troublesome. I advocate war. Yi Gongming is old and weak, his lifespan is about to run out. His attack just now was indeed powerful, but it is difficult for him to continue, it is difficult for him to sustain a protracted battle. The sword servant's killing intent surged. He glanced once more at the absolute heaven sword in Jiang Tian's hand, his eyes filled with fanatical greed. Retreat. Yi Gongming controls the unknown teleport array. Do you think he's the only one who came here? Black and White looked worried and scanned the surrounding area with their immortal will. If other soul formation cultivators invade this world, we'll be in great danger if there are 8 or 10 of them. The 2 of them had different opinions, so they both looked at Ban Shan. Cold sweat rolled down Ban Shan's forehead like a waterfall and the muscles around his eyes were trembling. Apparently, he was having an intense mental struggle and was extremely nervous. In the end, he gritted his teeth and shouted, "I advocate war." There were too many reasons to advocate war, so Ban Shan didn't need to say more. For example, the Emperor of the Ruins had already issued a kill order. Once they failed the mission, they would be severely punished, no matter how powerful they were. Not to mention that they would be immediately sent to the god execution stage and killed, they would at least be sent to a dead planet and be imprisoned. For example, they knew that the ruins of deity were facing a great crisis, so they had to go to Earth to find a new place to live. If they didn't kill Jiang Tian and open the many teleport arrays to enter the solar system, they and their descendants would all be killed. So, let's fight. Black and White didn't hesitate at all. Their will to fight was rising. He glanced at Princess Tingyu and the others before he shouted coldly, "All of you, step back. This battle will cause the heavens to collapse and the earth to rend." "I understand." Princess Tingyu, Zhao Shanhe, Cheng Aojuan and Jiang and I were startled. They all realized that the 3 soul formation cultivators were determined to kill Kang Teichu and were about to perform their best skills to fight Yi Gongming. That kind of battle would burn their divine powers to the extreme. One attack could destroy 1,000 miles away and shake the world. Given their level, they wouldn't be able to withstand it at all. They released many Dharma artifacts to float in the sky. Then they either rode on their swords or rode on their boats, pushing their speed to the maximum and retreated again and again. After retreating for a few thousand miles, they had already reached the edge of the mountain range. "You're asking for death." Yi Gongming's eyes flashed fiercely. He held the crocodile scissors in his hand and shouted in an overbearing manner, "The heavenly crocodile clan can swallow the stars and shatter the moon. If it weren't for the fact that I'm not acclimatized and my cultivation method is not compatible with the Great Tao, I would have killed even the Emperor of the Ruins. Do you really think I'm easy to bully? You've been a soul formation cultivator for a few thousand years. Now, you're still unable to improve after such a long time. What's there to be proud of? We're not afraid of you." Ban Shan roared. The muscles on his resolute face trembled and his will to fight was boundless. "Just because your cultivation method is incompatible with the world, you're inferior to us." The sword servant looked at Yi Gongming arrogantly. He thought Yi Gongming was only powerful and that he would be defeated again and again. Black and White said concisely without the slightest nonsense. The 2 sides had fought for 1,000 years and their hatred was as deep as the sea. The Empire of the Ruins of Immortality had also extended an olive branch and tried to recruit them. But the 7 great pirate families refused. They were the most stubborn of the rebel forces in the Ruins of Immortality and Yi Gongming was their spiritual leader. During the Age of Tao damage, your ancestors attacked the ancient heavenly court with that son of a bitch, the Ruins Emperor. They massacred everyone and tried to seize our territory, causing chaos. Today, we'll settle all the old and new grudges. Yi Gongming was an old general with unparalleled power. Although he had survived thousands of battles and lived until now, he had his own pride and ideals. He was always thinking of overturning the Ruins Emperor's palace to avenge the Ao Emperor and other ancient sages. In recent years, he had led his clansmen to wreak havoc. He was still a treasure. "Let's do it," Ban Shan shouted and patted the storage bag at his waist. A palm-sized fire dragon cauldron flew out instantly. On the cauldron, there was a 9-clawed dragon roaring at the sky. Its eyes were vivid and divine aura was brewing on it. It could be called a superior-grade Dao artifact. "Fuck you!" Yi Gongming cursed loudly. The corners of his eyes twitched and tears seeped out of his demonic vertical pupils. Cold, killing intent flickered in his eyes as he was exasperated. This fire dragon was one of the 5 heavenly divine generals of the ancient heavenly court, the heavenly fire dragon general. It had reached the soul formation realm and could control heavenly fire and lightning. It could refine stars and shatter moons. Its strength was not far from the void return realm. It was an important minister of the Ao Emperor and a close comrade of Yi Gongming. However, he was later ambushed and killed by the Ruins Emperor and the headmaster. Not only did he die tragically, he even used his dragon corpse and lifelong Dao fruits to refine a huge furnace for forging iron. How could Yi Gongming not be angry? The fire dragon cauldron expanded in the wind and became 1,000 feet tall. It supported the heavens and the earth as it smashed towards Yi Gongming. The cauldron fire dragon that was coiled densely around it suddenly swung out. Its body, which was tens of thousands of feet long, straightened in the air. The vast and surging laws of thunder and fire appeared on it. There were even fragments of the great Dao floating up and down as it charged towards Yi Gongming. "Kill. Heavenly fire dragon, your corpse can't be saved. Don't blame me." Yi Gongming's face turned ruthless. He grabbed Jiang Tian with one hand and waved the crocodile scissors with the other. He stepped on the air and the void shattered as a deep crater appeared under his feet. His body was like a huge cannonball as he dodged the cauldron and crashed towards the heavenly fire dragon. Bang, bang, bang. In the void, there were continuous explosions as if hundreds of nuclear weapons had exploded at the same time. Light was blazing and the earth shook. Mushroom clouds that looked like giant flowers rose into the sky. Yi Gongming's surging body crashed through the dragon's head all the way to its tail. The fire dragon was actually the corpse of an ancient god. It contained his life's worth of Dao. After decades of refinement and augmentation by pinnacle experts like the Ruins Emperor and the Headmaster, it contained immense power. It was surrounded by thunder and fire laws and contained fragments of great Dao. Once it exploded, it would be extremely terrifying. Mountains collapsed and tsunamis roared. The heavens trembled and the earth collapsed. An extremely domineering aura swept across the world. Chapter 1553. Despicable Person. In the end, Yi Gongming jumped in front of Ban Shan and opened up the scissors. It shone with cold light as it cut towards Ban Shan. At this moment, although Jiang Tian's body was broken and couldn't be repaired, he was still conscious and his consciousness wasn't damaged. He could clearly feel that Yi Gongming had relied on his body and vast vital energy to break through without using any laws or great Daos. He immediately understood. Yi Gongming's laws and great Daos couldn't perfectly resonate with this world and couldn't be used. All these years, he could only rely on tempering his body and vital energy to increase his combat power. However, he had such terrifying combat power that he could break through the laws and great Daos. This old man is so ruthless. Ban Shan's eyes widened in disbelief as he retreated quickly. Luckily, he had already changed the trajectory of the furnace and was about to cause interference. Otherwise, he would have been cut in half by the scissors. Clang. As the cauldron smashed down, Yi Gongming's vertical pupils opened wide. He threw out a punch that shook the heavens. His valiance was unparalleled as he sent the cauldron flying 1,000 miles away, crashing through mountains and creating huge craters that were over 10 miles in radius. Rumble. Cracks appeared on the furnace, and then it exploded uncontrollably. The mountain range within 100 miles was turned into dust. This was a Dao artifact. Its power was so great that it had the ability to destroy heaven and earth. At this moment, billowing airwaves swept across the entire mountain range. All living beings were drowned like ants and could only struggle bitterly. Jiang and I, Princess Tingyu, Zhao Shanhe, Qing Aojuan, Su Chongqing, and the others were all prostrating on the ground. Their bodies were trembling uncontrollably. Facing this monstrous ancient god aura, they didn't have the slightest strength to resist. Ban Shan wasn't feeling well either. The furnace and giant hammer were his life Dao artifacts and were closely connected to his god. At this moment, the furnace was destroyed instantly. The god in his body roared, and his original body also spat out a mouthful of blood. It was extremely miserable. You made me disrespect the remains of my comrade. You bullied me like this. That. Yi Gongming glared at Ban Shan and shouted coldly. The giant crocodile scissors in his hand pointed at Ban Shan and rushed up at the speed of light, creating a space crack. No one would have thought that the ancient god Yi Gongming was able to unleash such a terrifying speed and battle prowess with only his vital essence and physical body. He did not use any nomological laws or great Daos, which was equivalent to his cultivation being forcefully suppressed to the golden elixir realm. In the blink of an eye, Yi Gongming traversed over 10 miles of the void and arrived in front of Ban Shan. He punched out with his left hand while the giant scissors in his right hand opened up, cutting through the void, shaking the heaven and earth and tearing the firmament apart. Ban Shan had nowhere to retreat. He swung his giant hammer and met the attack head-on. Clang! This giant hammer that had once shattered meteorites and forged asteroids was shattered by Yi Gongming's punch. Like a rubber ball, Ban Shan spun and flew backward for dozens of miles before he stabilized himself with great difficulty. Only the handle of the hammer remained in his hand, the web between his thumb and index finger had cracked open, the skin and flesh on his arm had split open, and his muscle fibers had been shaken into strands that fluttered in the air. His blood dyed the sky red, and the muscles on his entire body rippled indeterminately like water. Fuck your mother. I'm not even afraid of the headmaster or the ruins emperor, so why would I be afraid of a little brat like you? You're quite something since I didn't kill you with one punch. Yi Gongming's eyes were arrogant and wild. He was once a heavenly general of the heavenly court who fought against the heavens and the earth, and was extremely domineering. He was also the leader of the 7 great pirate aristocratic families who burned, killed, and plundered. He was extremely vicious and had a fiery temper. He cursed and was about to catch up again. Yi Gongming, do you think we don't exist? Black and White roared. At that moment, Ban Shan's life was already at stake. He did not hold back and took out his strongest Dao artifact. Chessboard Starry Sky, Inescapable Net. As the chessboard under him flew out, countless worlds appeared. Finally, they rapidly abstracted into crisscrossing straight lines. There were 19 horizontal and vertical lines, a total of 361 intersecting points. In addition to the 4 corners, there were a total of 365 black dots. It was like an inescapable net that covered the sky and the sun. It passed through the clouds and suddenly enveloped them. Every black dot in the giant net formed by the chessboard contained a little bit of starlight. A little bit of starlight seemed to be a world. In the entire giant net, the laws of yin and yang, life and death, ingenuity, reality and illusion intertwined and changed. Its power was vast and contained endless laws. It was tough and indestructible and could destroy a phenomenal soul formation cultivator. It wanted to kill Yi Gongming and Jiang Tian. Fancy, big but useless. Yi Gongming roared angrily. The crocodile scissors pointed at the sky and shattered the void. As it opened and closed, it instantly tore the giant net apart. However, there were still 7 or 8 threads that cut Yi Gongming's body. Immediately, his skin and flesh were torn open and his bones could be seen. Then, the sword servant's sword of the Great Path also exploded in an instant. Yi Gongming was beaten up and flew up and down, his body was covered in blood. Fuck you. I want revenge. I'll cut you into pieces. Yi Gongming shouted and rushed towards Black and White. Senior, don't fight with them anymore. This kind of war of attrition is meaningless. After I break through, I'll kill them all in one go. Jiang Tian said with his immortal will. He respected Yi Gongming very much. Yi Gongming used to be a heavenly general in the ancient times who fought to protect the deity ground. In fact, Yi Gongming's lifespan was longer than Jiang Tian's in both his previous and current lives combined. In any case, he deserved to be called senior. Don't you want the pearl orchid tree? I just sent the kids of the Ying family and the Tian family to steal it. Yi Gongming was fighting with the 3 soul formation cultivators as he said with his immortal will. I'm just fighting with them to fool them. They're right. I can't hold on for long with my old arms and legs. Right then, Jiang Tian scanned with his immortal will and saw many thieves with the blood of the pangolin bloodline and the vole bloodline, and some strange-looking monsters were digging underground crazily around the pearl orchid tree, forming a large empty area. Yi Chun and Ying Long, the 2 of them had left and returned. They were busy giving orders. Long Xingnan, Ghost Wolf, Bai Muxue and Sword Master Ao Tian had also entered. However, the pearl orchid tree wasn't uprooted, it kept sinking. Under the tree, there was a giant teleport portal with a radius of 10 miles. The patterns and arrays on it were old and mottled. It should be an ancient relic, but it was quite powerful. It could teleport a few 100,000 miles or even to the outside world. All of a sudden, the entire pearl lily tree suddenly collapsed. Many pangolins and voles jumped in excitement. They lifted their arms and shoulders and dragged the pearl lily tree into the portal. There was a flash of light and the teleport portal, the pearl orchid tree and the monsters disappeared in a blink. Boom! After a loud noise, a pit with a radius of more than 10 miles appeared where the pearl orchid tree used to be. Today, I'm going to fight you to the death. At the same time, Yi Gongming performed all his power and attacked the 3 of them a dozen times in a row, forcing them back. Guys, let's go. I'll take your heads when I'm free. All of a sudden, he smirked and slapped his bag of holding, summoning a teleportation portal with spatial fluctuations. He stepped into it with Jiang Tian and instantly disappeared. Black and White, Ban Shan and the sword servant, who were covered in blood, rushed forward, but they couldn't find even a shadow. That old bastard is so cunning. Ban Shan spat out a mouthful of bloody saliva. This mouthful of saliva was stained with divine blood. It smashed the rocks and rolled up huge waves. It blew the towering trees apart like grass. He cursed, "He destroyed my Taoist artifact. I'll find him someday and twist his head off." Even the pearl orchid tree was dug away by them. Black and White were extremely angry. They looked at the huge pit and the many intertwined tunnels with the corners of their eyes trembling. It's the work of the Ying family of Dakou. We were so focused on fighting Yi Gongming that we didn't realize that they stole it from under our noses. We're in trouble. The sword servant put away the 3-foot-long sword and put it back into the sheath. The Dakou family wants to join forces with Kong Teichu. Once Kong Teichu has the help of the Gate of Heaven left from the Age of Tao damage, he can freely travel through the worlds of the ruins of immortality. The defense line that we painstakingly set up will be useless. Moreover, the Dakou family has a lot of cultivation resources. Once they are open to Kong Teichu, how long will it take for him to break through to the nascent soul level? Jiang and I, Princess Tingyu, Cheng Aojuan, Zhao Shanhe and Su Changqing also thought of this. Their scalps tingled and their hearts almost exploded. Chapter 1554. Jiang Tian seemed to have had an incomparably long dream. Everything in front of him was grotesque and variegated, constantly changing. Only when the faces of Zhao Xueqing and his daughter appeared, it was incomparably clear. Xueqing. Jiang Tian opened his eyes and saw a gentle girl in white standing in front of him. He grabbed her hand and didn't want to let go. Could it be that the Gate of Heaven influence was capable of teleporting between galaxies, instantly traversing a distance of 4 light-years and sending him to Earth? Senior Tai Chu Yu. Bai Muxue didn't expect Jiang Tian to grab her hand and pull her into his embrace as soon as he woke up. She blushed, but she couldn't break free from his embrace. Where are we? Upon hearing Bai Muxue's voice, Jiang Tian awkwardly let go of her hand and asked. Then he realized that it was just an illusion. After all, he had left Earth for 2 years and missed Zhao Xueqing and his family very much. After you entered the Gate of Sky Influence, The space ripples were too strong and you passed out. We're now on planet Xian, a dimensional planet jointly occupied by the 7 great pirate families. Bai Muxue said softly. A dimensional planet. Jiang Tian was slightly moved. No wonder the 7 great pirate families were able to develop slowly. It turned out that they controlled a dimensional world and could avoid the pursuit of the Emperor of the Ruins. A dimensional world was different from an ordinary world. It had been folded with an ancient array, making it difficult for the outside world to detect and observe. The worlds in the ruins of deity also had dimensional barriers, but those dimensional barriers focused on defense and resisting the invasion of foreign enemies, not hiding, so they didn't have the ability to fold space. Those vast planets were visible to the naked eye in the night sky. On the other hand, the solar system, such as planet Tianxing, Chiye, Heavenly State and West Earth, were dimensional worlds and couldn't be observed at all. At the moment he felt very weak. His energy center and golden core were full of cracks and he almost fell to the foundation establishment level. Let's go out and take a look. Jiang Tian walked out of the door with Bai Mushua's help. There was no sunlight in this world. The sky was pitch black, and not a single blade of grass grew. There were not many living creatures, and it was desolate and lonely. Judging from the curve of the horizon, it was not big. It was about the same size as the moon. Inside the craters, metal and crystal bases of different sizes had been built. They were tall and majestic, covered in ancient rune arrays and Taoist patterns that were glittering coldly. Starry sky battleships and war chariots were docked around the base. They were mottled with copper rust and looked ancient. Large artifacts were installed on them. Jiang Tian was in a base, but there were several nascent soul heavenly lords guarding the base with large Dharma artifacts. From the looks of it, it was not to protect Jiang Tian, but to prevent Jiang Tian from escaping. Where is the pearl perilla tree? Jiang Tian asked. We've been here for 3 days. A hint of bitterness appeared on Bai Mushue's pretty face. On the second day, the lords of the 7 great pirate clans came one after another and held a meeting to discuss the matter. I heard from Yi Chun and Ying Long that they had a disagreement. Senior Ghost Wolf and Fairy Sheng'an are confined in different bases. Jiang Tian snorted and a hint of coldness appeared in his eyes. No team could be 100% united. The 7 great pirate clans were also divided into several forces. The Yi family and the Ying family might support him, but the other 5 families might not. They all had their own agendas and standpoints. The so-called confinement was obviously confinement and imprisonment. Bai Muxue was just afraid that he would be infuriated and fight with them, so she put it in a more subtle way. Senior, you haven't recovered yet. You should. Bai Muxue said with a worried face. Don't worry. I won't be reckless. Jiang Tian nodded. The place where Jiang Tian was located was also a secluded, funnel-shaped mountain range. It was a place where earth veins gathered and could gather astral power. It was the perfect place for Jiang Tian to cultivate in secluded cultivation and recover from his injuries. In a base not far from the place where Jiang Tian was in seclusion, several leaders of the Great Ko family were having a battle of words, discussing how to deal with Jiang Tian. Kong Teichu's Dan Tian and Golden Core are both damaged and his body is broken. He's already disabled. What's the point of saving him? He'll only cause trouble. A tall middle-aged man with a domineering aura said with disdain. He had the word, king, on his forehead and his eyes were fierce. He was already at the first level of the soul formation realm and was in his prime. His power was not much weaker than Yi Gongming's. He had an extraordinary background. He was the descendant of the mountain tiger god, one of the divine generals of the heavenly court. He was the lord of the 3rd great pirate clan and his name was Tu Fei. He was a peerless fierce man who had mastered the 9 moves of the tiger god. His Dharma laws had been condensed into fragments of the Grand Tao and he was invincible. He didn't like to steal treasures. Instead, he liked to use large Dharma artifacts to blow up the residences of the royal families and nobles of the ruins of immortality. Everywhere he went, there would be nothing left. In fact, the lords of the 7 great pirate clans had all reached the soul formation realm and their power was extraordinary. Fei, he was injured under the joint attack of the Sword Servant, Ban Shan and Black and White, 3 veteran Soul Formation Realm cultivators. If you were in his position, you might not be able to escape alive. Yi Gongming had already turned into his human form. He was a skinny and ugly little old man, but he was still majestic and had the highest seniority. He sat at the top. This kid is quite powerful. Tu Fei's expression changed slightly and he clicked his tongue. His most valiant battle record was that he had killed a divine general and was a half-step soul formation realm cultivator, which he had always been proud of. But facing 3 soul formation realm cultivators like Ban Shan, to be honest, he was also a fool and didn't have much confidence. Old master, you're too loyal. It's undeniable that Kong Taichu is indeed powerful. But that was in the past. Now he's disabled. Are you still thinking that he can return to his peak? Another lord of the great pirate clan spoke. This person was hanging upside down from the beam. His thick and muscular body was entangled with his arms crossed in front of his chest. There was a pair of black wings on his back and his face was very ugly. His teeth were white and his small eyes were black like mung beans. But his power was extraordinary and he didn't use any divine arts. The sound waves from his mouth caused the surrounding space to fluctuate abnormally violently, as if it could break through space at any time. Beside him, there were 2 other great pirates who looked almost identical to him. They were twins. He's not a woman, we can't use him to reproduce. Why save him? It's a waste of treasures. The younger brother hugged his shoulders and snorted. He's a man with thick skin. He won't taste good even if he's roasted. The elder brother who spoke earlier snorted. Even if Jiang Tian was here, he would be slightly moved. These 2 black bats were a primeval mutant, a very terrifying mutant. There was no demonic aura on them anymore. Instead, it was replaced by a godlike aura. They should be the descendants of the gods and devils. In fact, they were indeed the descendants of the Heavenly Bat Divine General, one of the Heavenly Divine Generals of the ancient Heavenly Courts. According to ancient records, the Heavenly Bat Divine General wasn't a native of the deity ground, but an alien race from outer space. In the ancient celestial land, the spiritual energy was surging, and the vitality was vast. All kinds of thousands of years old spiritual herbs could be found everywhere. In the deep mountains and great lakes, there were spiritual springs gushing out, and they were brilliant cultivation stars. There were giants with mountains and moons on their shoulders, beasts with stars above their heads and ancient gods who could trample the world. There were also many alien races that came to Earth to settle down. The ancient heavenly courts at that time accepted all kinds of people and gave them important tasks as long as they were talented. The Heavenly Bat Divine General was one of them. He was also loyal to the Shang Emperor and the Ao Emperor. He had made great contributions in the ancient times and during the era of interstellar wanderings, and died on the battlefield during the age of Dao damage. These 2 bats were the 5th generation of the Heavenly Bat Divine General. One was called Fu Huiren and the other was Fu Heishui. Many of the Heavenly Bat Divine General's direct descendants had died in the age of Dao damage. Up until now, there were only 2 brothers left of this kind of Heavenly Bat bloodline, and both of them were male. Reproduction had become a big problem. Fu Huiren and his brother were famous among the great Ko clans for their speed. Their sound wave attacks weren't bad either. Furthermore, they were proficient in concealment and disguise. What they liked to do the most was to kidnap the holy maidens of the heavenly abodes, the daughters of the nobles, and even the concubines and queens of the dynasties of the ruins of immortality from the layers of restrictive spells in their mansions and courtyards, and then force them to have sex with them, hoping to leave behind their bloodline seeds. However, the results would often leave them greatly disappointed. They would immediately turn hostile and demand a large amount of ransom, demanding an exorbitant price. If the hostage wasn't paid, they would kill the hostage and eat her in front of everyone. Therefore, the Fu brothers were despicable and cruel. They were known as the top kidnappers and perverts in the ruins of immortality. They were the most wanted criminals in the Emperor Palace. Chapter 1555. Kong Taichu is too reckless and we don't agree with his strategy. We're using guerrilla tactics and he's using defensive tactics. We're not on the same page. Another great co-family head said, Yun Zhongzi. He was also a descendant of the heavenly court's monster god and had the white crane bloodline. He was handsome, wearing a white feather robe and a star crown. He held a crane beak in his hand and carried a long sword with a white scabbard on his back. If Kong Taechu can really recover, he'll be as powerful as us. Who's going to be the boss if we work together? Who's going to keep their word? Who's going to get the territory? This old man was dressed like an old farmer. He wore a shabby jacket made of coarse cloth, revealing his bronze-colored chest and lumps of meat. He was smoking a pipe with a jasper pole and said with a chuckle, Nyo Duo Tion, a grand fae with the divine bull bloodline. His ancestor was in charge of countless spirit fields and spirit medicine gardens in the heavenly court. He was an earth divine general and also the heavenly court's minister of agriculture. Until now, he had been reduced to a bandit. He occupied a mountain and called himself king. He often robbed people, but he still liked to farm. He would immediately raise the temples, clear the palaces, renovate the land and plant the seeds. It was said that he also controlled an unknown small world, which was filled with ancient herbs and spirit plants. Old bull, don't be too selfish. If Kong Taechu can really lead us to the ruins of deities, we'll have billions of territories. Do you think we'll need your land? Yi Gongming frowned. I think we shouldn't work with Kong Taechu. We'll send him away when he recovers. Ao Xian said coldly. There's nothing to say. I think he might not be from Earth, but from deep in space. He's just pretending to be a descendant of the deity ground. We all know that Earth was surrounded by the deity trap array and it's a dead planet. How can he have such a powerful inheritance? This was a bandit who was on the same level as Yi Gongming. Even though he was a junior, he had the blood of the Azure Dragon, the descendant of Ao Huang. Although they both had the Flood Dragon bloodline, he was much stronger than the Dragon Gate's realm lord, Ao Feng. Just the fact that he had established the Flood Dragon Water Palace in the fallen Immortal Sea region above the ruins of immortality and had survived hundreds of attacks from the ruins Emperor's Palace for 1,000 years without collapsing meant that his strength and knowledge were 10 or 100 times greater than Ao Feng's. What he said was not without reason. In fact, this was also the reason why they imprisoned Jiang Tian, Ghost Wolf, and the others. They couldn't figure out Jiang Tian's background. They believed that if Jiang Tian came from the solar system, he would not have such a powerful cultivation. He needed to treat it with caution. At this moment, Ying Long took a step forward and said, Seniors, Kong Taechu is indeed from ancient Earth. He has seen my ancestor, Ying Ziyu. By the side, Ying Long's father, Ying Shan, nodded. My son has always been honest. I can testify on this matter. Most of the bandits were unruly and rebellious, unwilling to be under Jiang Tian. For a time, everyone was arguing and discussing endlessly, unable to reach a consensus. Then Yi Gongming was annoyed and he said coldly, Looks like other than the Yi family and the Ying family, no one agrees to work with Kong Taechu. How about this? We'll give the pearl tree to him. The Yi family and the Ying family stole it. It has nothing to do with you. Do you have any objections? We have no objections. Many of the bandits weren't unreasonable, they all nodded. You don't have the right to decide whether to work with Kong Taechu or not. He might not even like us. Yi Gongming grunted. He had observed the battle between Jiang Tian and the 3 soul formation cultivators when he was hiding in the gate of Sky Bearing. To be honest, Jiang Tian was only slightly weaker. He even suspected that even if he didn't do anything, Jiang Tian would be able to save himself and even defeat them. However, he would have to pay a certain price. But what's so great about him? I'll kick him out of the sky with my hooves. Nyo Duotian chuckled and said proudly. It's unreasonable for us to imprison his disciples. Yi Gongming ignored Nyo Duotian and said again, Once Jiang Taichu recovers to his peak, we'll let him go whether he stays or leaves. Let's listen to his opinion. What if he wants to stay? Let him be the 8th son and be my younger brother. Nyo Duan laughed out loud, puffing out 2 puffs of smoke from his thick nostrils. Let's have a competition. Yi Gongming glanced around and smiled. Even though our 7 great pirate clans are of the same lineage, we've been fighting for ourselves all these years like a tray of loose sand. Let's fight. Whoever wins will be publicly elected as the leader of the 7 great pirate clans. We don't need the title of the 7 families. We'll call them the Divine Army of the Heavenly Court. The name of a bandit doesn't sound good. Yi Gongming's eyes glittered coldly and he said cunningly, "Do you have the guts?" "Great. I've always wanted to have a competition with you." Tu Fei grinded his teeth as he scanned the crowd with a smile. "Before the competition, we'll kidnap a few princesses and saintesses to reproduce. Otherwise, if anything happens to them, we won't let our parents down." Fu Huairen and Tu Fei looked at each other and said secretly, "Hehe, if I win, all your territories will belong to me. Won't there be billions of fertile lands?" Niu Duotian rubbed his hands excitedly. "Hehe, you're too weak. I'm afraid that I'll kill you with one punch." The Green Dragon King shook his body and the dragon scales on his body swayed. He looked at them with disdain. "After all, we're a family. Let's stop here. In fact, we'll know each other's strength after a slight collision." Yi Gongming smiled and said, "By then, Kong Teichu will convince you." After the meeting, Yi Gongming immediately brought Yi Chun, Ying Long and Ying Shan to visit Jiang Tian. "Tai Chu, you've recovered well." The moment he saw Jiang Tian, Yi Gongming was shocked. A time array plate hung down with tens of thousands of silk ribbons, enveloping Jiang Tian. A 30-meter-long divine plate bloomed behind Jiang Tian's back. A 1,000-meter-long Taotai stood in the ring-shaped mountain, swallowing the star energy in the universe. Thousands of mending heavens pills floated around. They exploded one after another, turning into pure medicinal energy to repair Jiang Tian's damaged dantian. The terrifying true fire of the sun and the vast star energy were all swallowed by the Tao. The 30-meter-long divine plate gradually solidified and was even brighter than before. Terrifying. He actually recovered from an unrecoverable injury in one day. Ying Shan, Ying Long, and Yi Chun were also shocked. The corners of their eyes twitched. Jiang Tian could actually swallow the star energy in the universe to increase his cultivation. This was too heaven-defying. Only deity transformation experts could do this. In fact, they had overestimated Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian indeed knew such a cultivation art, but it was too slow. The stars and moonlight weren't enough to support Jiang Tian's rapid recovery. He had killed many nascent soul cultivators and even divine emperors along the way in the North Sea and Penglai world. Jiang Tian didn't waste their blood, nascent souls, and god fragments. He stored them in the sky-swallowing demonic gourd. Jiang Tian's first step was to absorb and refine those energies. The star energy was just a supplement. "Senior Gongming, everyone, thank you for your help." Jiang Tian suddenly opened his eyes. He put the 30-meter-long divine plate back into his dantian and sent the time array plate into the sky-swallowing demonic gourd. He then stood up and thanked them. "Tai Chu, you're fighting to protect Earth, while we're fighting to restore the ancient heavenly court and avenge our ancestors. However, we're all fighting to kill the Ruins Emperor and overturn the Ruins Emperor's palace. Our goal is the same." Yi Gongming held Jiang Tian's hand affectionately and sat down on a cold meteor. He smiled and said, "To be honest, this old man admires you a lot. All these years, we've never built a base, nor have we successfully occupied any world. We're just scattered soldiers, ambushing and destroying everywhere. But you've completely occupied the Hylon worlds in just 6 months. It's not easy. There's nothing I can do about it." Jiang Tian smiled wryly and said, "The Ruins Emperor wants to conquer the solar system. The fastest way is to use the world-whole teleportation arrays in these worlds. I have to build an iron fortress to stop them." Indeed, the ancient Earth's planet destruction is said to be a great opportunity for immortal ascension. It's fatally attractive to the ruins of immortality. Yi Gongming said. Jiang Tian nodded. After the Spirit Qi revival, Earth developed in the direction of a bright cultivation planet and could even become a cultivation sacred ground. Besides, the ruins of immortality also seems to be facing a world-ending crisis. They have to find a new place to live, and that place is Earth. Yi Gongming added. World-ending crisis? What's that? Jiang Tian was slightly moved and confused. Chapter 1556. The old man doesn't know the details either. I'm afraid only Sky River Star Lord and Sky Palace know the details, but it's true. Yi Gongming smiled. He talked about some evidence. They were all inferences, but this inference was not without foundation. There was a lot of evidence to support it. By the way, I once saw an interstellar dust belt on the way to Alpha Centauri. It was passed by someone. Jiang Tian frowned and asked, that dust belt? The dust belt is located between Alpha Centauri and the solar system. It is 3 light-years away from Earth and 1 light-year away from Alpha Centauri. And in the dust belt, there are thousands of neatly arranged hollow traces. They are like sharp swords pointing in the direction of Earth. With the current human technology, the most advanced radio telescopes could not capture the interstellar spaceships that were like dust compared to the stars. But this dust belt proved that intelligent life was passing through it and pointing to Earth. It was like leaving a trail of footprints in the vast snow. In the dust belt, there were traces left by intelligent life. It had always been a shadow in Jiang Tian's heart. This proved that intelligent life was rushing to Earth. Moreover, the level of this civilization was very high. It was very likely that Earth would face a disaster. It was equivalent to when Jiang Tian was on an expedition and his backyard was on fire. He had asked many people about this, such as Ghost Wolf, Long Shengnan, and so on. He had even searched the souls of many people like Prince Spring Rain and Emperor Hanshi. However, there was no valid information. As far as I know, the ruins of immortality do not have such a level of flying Dharma artifact. It has not reached the level of traveling between different galaxies. It can only be limited to the Alpha Centauri. Yi Gongming frowned and pondered for a while. Otherwise, they would not have needed to spend so much effort to control the teleportation array of the dimensional hole and use it to travel to Earth. Perhaps, it's a trace left behind from the ancient mythological era. In ancient times, many extraterrestrial civilizations descended on Earth and the deity ground. That dust belt and the traces in it might have been formed in ancient times? Jiang Tian frowned and said nothing. He felt uneasy. The old man knows that you have left Earth for some time without any news. You must be missing your family and worried about the fate of Earth. Yi Gongming said, however, there is no return. However, there is no turning back. My young friend, you are here to slay the Ruins Emperor. Don't forget your original intentions. If the Ruins Emperor were to kill you, occupy the Dragon Gate world, and reconstruct the World Cave teleportation array, he would definitely attack Earth immediately. Yes. Thank you for your guidance, Senior. This junior understands. A resolute look appeared on Jiang Tian's face. When the old man heard that you wanted to refine the laws of wood, he brought the pearly pearl tree over. Other than that, he also brought many wood-type materials, great herbs, and spirit herbs that our Yin clan and the Hu clan had accumulated over thousands of years. I hope you can make a breakthrough soon. Yi Gongming smiled. He made a hand seal. Immediately, the pearl orchid tree that was over 3,000 meters tall emerged from the storage bag and slowly landed on the ground. In addition, there were also many great herbs and spiritual plants of the wood element piled up in the ring-shaped mountain like a sea of smoke, occupying an area of 100 meters in radius. Jiang Tian could use them as he wished. Senior, these are too valuable. Jiang Tian scanned with his divine sense and was slightly moved. Silver leaf grass, dragon bone wisteria, green wood demon core, jade immortal peach tree. Those wood-type heavenly treasures were naturally nothing in the central galaxy, but they were priceless in the ruins of deity as they contained extremely dense and pure wood-type spirit chi. Some of them were even thousands of years old and were stained with the blood of soul formation cultivators. Apparently, they came from the ancient heavenly courts and had been passed down through countless battles. The ancient saints had paid the price of their lives to preserve them. There were very few of them left in the world and they were extremely precious. Brother Jiang, the 7 pirate clans are fighting for themselves like scattered soldiers. In the old man's opinion, it would be difficult for them to complete the task of restoring the ancient heavenly courts even after a few hundred or 1,000 years. Yi Gongming looked dejected as he lamented, "The old man is old. He's only a soul formation cultivator. Being able to live to this age is already the limit of the old man's life." The only reason he could last until now was because the old man had gone through a few thousand years of blood coagulation. Otherwise, he would have died long ago. There's not much time left for the old man. What the old man can do is to gather the 7 groups and cause some trouble for the Ruins Emperor. However, the responsibility of uniting the roots of the ancient heavenly courts and overturning the Ruins Emperor's throne will be left to you. After you break through, they'll come and challenge you. They're tough, so don't hold back. Beat them until they're convinced. Yi Gongming said with a hopeful smile. "Don't worry, senior. I'll make sure they're convinced," Jiang Tian said with a faint smile. Yi Gongming and the others didn't disturb Jiang Tian for too long. They immediately left and let Jiang Tian cultivate in seclusion. Boom! Jiang Tian was startled and the 30-foot divine wheel behind him shone brightly. The true seal representing the Tao Ye's essence returning suddenly lit up and let out a dazzling light. The Taotai behemoth formed by the essence returning law kept expanding until it was the size of a small mountain. It opened its mouth and swallowed the pearl tree. The pearl tree looked like it was made of jade. Its branches were crystal clear and its leaves shone with a precious glow. Clouds rose as auspicious colors and rays bloomed. It was extremely mystical. It was a divine tree that had grown in the Penglai world 10,000 years ago. It was formed from the crystallization of abundant and condensed wood elemental spirit qi. A few leaves and branches were enough to help a golden core advance to the nascent soul realm. Back then, Sword Venerable Ao Tian had used an insignificant leaf to reach the limit of sublimation and successfully break through the nascent soul realm. Boom! Under the Tao Ye's essence returning law, the pearl tree's branches and leaves melted bit by bit, turning into strands of spirit qi that poured into the whirling divine tree, turning into the corresponding quintessential essence and constantly strengthening it. In the end, Jiang Tian took out the time array disk and enveloped his body with the power of time acceleration to speed up the absorption and refinement. As the pearly pearl tree was refined, the shadow of the galaxy left behind by the laws of the dancing divine tree on the divine disk continued to solidify. When its quantity reached the extreme, it leaped in the direction of a qualitative change. Gradually, the whirling divine tree was completely formed by Dharma runes and a wood elemental true seal was formed. The corresponding golden core was about to form a nascent soul. A few days later, a cracking sound was heard. In the sky, the giant pearl tree that had completely darkened turned into powder and scattered in the air. Even the wood elemental spirit treasures that Yi Gongming had given him disappeared in a blink. At this moment, not only had his injuries completely healed, but his golden core had also improved by one step. The galaxy representing the wood elemental golden core had no vitality and the stars were firmly embedded together like rivets, forming a green tree that was extremely solid. It was the true seal of the whirling divine tree. Jiang Tian's eyes glittered and he checked his Dan Tian with his immortal will. A glint of joy appeared on his face. He stood up and said, Another nascent soul is formed. The wood elemental true seal has formed and the divine body has reached the perfected level. Akong Techu, you've recovered. The 7 pirate families are here to meet you." A long howl was heard. Numerous overbearing figures shot over from afar like arrows. They stood on the ring-shaped mountain, and their bodies were either surrounded by black water, spatial fluctuations, silver light flickering, black water overflowing into the heavens, or blood energy surging. Every single one of them had an extraordinary bearing, and there were deities rumbling and trembling within their bodies. They looked down at Jiang Tian with disdain, their faces full of excitement and eagerness. They were precisely the lords of the 7 great pirate families. "You want to spar with me, right?" Jiang Tian flicked his sleeves and rose to the sky. He stood with his hands behind his back and smiled. "That's right. You've all reached the soul formation level. I can beat you up. Kid, you're really arrogant. Let's fight." Nyo Duotian snickered and took a step forward, crossing 10 miles. The lumps on his body wriggled like countless live mice and he directly threw a punch. Chapter 1557. Plow the courtyard and sweep the acupoints. As he punched out, the ox god in his body roared furiously. He didn't need to raise his whip to kick his hooves. Wherever his fist passed, the ground cracked and rocks rolled. 1,000-foot-long ravine suddenly split open and appeared. This dimension world was an ancient land. There were ancient runes and restrictions in the world that suppressed all essence chi and dharma power. It was extremely stable, just like cement with countless special steel bars. There were fist-sized rocks everywhere and they were as heavy as a millstone in the outside world. So, even though this dimension world was small, its gravity was even stronger than that of the Penglai world. If this punch was launched in the outside world, it would have destroyed at least 100 miles. Wherever the fist passed, hundreds of demonic bulls of law charged out, charging straight at Jiang Tian. Their iron hooves tore through the void, and their horns destroyed everything. One bull of law could easily kill a nascent soul cultivator, and some of them were formed by the fragments of the Grand Tao, so they were even more powerful and could severely injure a soul formation cultivator. Besides, there were hundreds of them, so their power was terrifying. Gung Metal Fist. Jiang Tian's black hair fluttered without wind and his divine body was glittering. He threw a punch at the bulls of law. Boom! After a series of explosions, the bulls of law exploded one after another under the attack of the law of Gung Metal. Clang! In the end, their fists collided. Their clothes and hair fluttered behind them like flags. The blood-colored divine bull Dao mark and the golden Gung Metal law seethed and intertwined around the fist, colliding and obliterating each other, exploding out huge colorful spatial cracks, magnificent but also incomparably dangerous. The two were in a temporary stalemate. All of a sudden, the golden rule of Gingjin transformed into thin swords that were as thin as ox hair and swimming fish. They swam along Nyo Duotian's fists and arms and toward his chest. They were densely packed and innumerable. In an instant, they pierced through the divine treasures and locked onto the god, ready to strike at any moment. Nyo Duotian felt extremely uncomfortable, as if his body would crack in the next second. His face turned pale. Stop. I surrender. How can there be such a terrifying law of metal? The next moment, Jiang Tian pulled back his fist. But Nyo Duotian had already been sent flying 10 miles away like a kite with a broken string, falling into another crater. This kid is powerful. It's clearly a law, but it actually has the power of the great Tao. The corners of Tu Fei's eyes twitched, and so did the king character tattooed on his forehead. A ferocious glint shot out from his eyes. But in terms of sound wave attacks, he might not be able to defeat me. Fu Huairan snorted coldly as he hung upside down on the golden hook. We can also escape into space and are proficient in hiding. He won't be able to find us. Brother, why don't we go first? Fu Heishui was also eager to give it a try. Let me go first. After killing him, I'll sell his corpse to you two brothers. You can roast it and eat it. Yun Zhongzi shouted. This old man will go first. He has a lot of health, so I'll wear him down first. There was no water vapor in this place, and the laws were incomplete. Miley water laws and Great Tao cannot be fully unleashed. The Green Dragon King also took a step forward, his battle intent surging. His meaning was self-evident. He didn't have the confidence to crush Jiang Tian by himself. He only wanted to exhaust him as much as possible so that his old friends could gain the upper hand. Why don't you all come at me together? I'm in a hurry. Jiang Tian snickered with arrogance in his eyes. Yi Gongming's forehead was covered in sweat. He knew Jiang Tian was powerful, but it was also dangerous for him to fight against a dozen soul formation cultivators at the same time. He's out of his mind. There are so many soul formation cultivators here, but he's not afraid at all. The soul formation cultivators of the Great Ko family were enraged. Fu Huairan was so angry that his face turned red. He jumped up and down and screamed as if he had been greatly insulted. Let's fulfill his wish. The Green Dragon King shouted. He stepped forward and the Li water surrounded him, forming Dharma laws. Countless dragons around him roared and dashed towards Jiang Tian. Arrogant. Let him know how powerful we are. Yun Zhongzi raised his eyebrows and his eyes glittered. The deity in his body roared and he turned into a beam of sword aura, heading towards Jiang Tian. This guy has a special bloodline. Let's kill him and roast him. He'll be very nutritious. Fu Huairan flapped his wings and screamed. Sound waves rolled out, breaking the space and heading towards Jiang Tian. Isn't that right? Sprinkle some salt and pepper. I want it medium well. A man's meat might be old, but it's chewier. He Shui Fu's figure flashed as he entered the void. In the next moment, a crack appeared behind Jiang Tian's back. Tu Fei was also enraged. He took out a tiger-tailed whip and sneered, Kong Teichu, we're not bullying you with numbers. You asked for it. This was a shocking scene. Other than Yi Gongming and Ying Shan, the other soul formation cultivators of the 7 great bandits all attacked. Although they knew that this was a competition and would not really kill, the Dharma laws that were unleashed were not fake. They were extremely powerful. The sky of the entire small world trembled and the earth trembled. Many bases made rustling noises as if they were about to collapse. Tonglong. Tu Fei moved later but arrived first. He had comprehended the 9 stances of the tiger god to the extreme. When he punched out, clumps of Dharma laws formed into a tiger, forming a string of tiger shadows that contained Dharma fragments. White tiger biting the sun, evil tiger leaving the cave, crossing the mountains, entering the cave to hunt, fierce tiger steals the heart. He attacked Jiang Tian crazily. You think you can hurt me with this? Difficult. Jiang Tian squinted his eyes. He waved his finger and the vermilion bird heavenly saber swept out. It was as fast as lightning and struck the tiger shadows. Heavenly fire prairie burning. The 9 tigers formed of Dharma laws were destroyed by the true fire. Tu Fei was sent flying backwards. He knocked a soul formation cultivator behind him away as well. The two crashed through the mountain walls of the ring-shaped mountain. With a series of pring pring pang sounds, they destroyed 7 or 8 ring-shaped mountains and bases. Finally, a mushroom cloud rose from a place dozens of kilometers away. It was unknown what it crashed into before it stopped. Before the others could come back to their senses, Jiang Tian took a step forward and used the Kunpeng to come to Fu Huairan's back. Fu Huairan reacted quickly. He opened his mouth and screamed. A strange sound wave blasted out of the alternate dimension. Half of his body was already inside. Jiang Tian used the Kunpeng and waved his finger. Void-shattering saber. The alternate dimension cracked open. Fu Huairan was shaken out of the alternate dimension. He saw a thunder mantis roaring and spewing lightning. Thunderbolts that looked like giant dragons attacked him. He screamed and showed the heavenly bat deity. His body suddenly grew to 100 feet tall. He flapped his wings and backed off quickly. At the same time, he protected his body with his wings like a shield. The thunder dragon flashed and his wings cracked. The thunderbolts struck his divine treasure deity. Terrifying cracks appeared on his body. His fur was immediately burnt and emitted a strong fragrance. It was only a little bit worse than the smell of barbecued meat. "Brother, are you okay?" Fu Heishui flew to the sky and caught him with his arms. His eyes were filled with concern. All of a sudden he couldn't help but drool. His eyes were filled with greed as he murmured, "This is considered medium well. It smells so good." Fu Huairan had just woken up. He was so angry that he almost fainted again. He roared, "You want to eat me? Go and beat him up." "All right." Fu Heishui threw him to the ground, causing his brother to squeak in pain. Fu Heishui once again charged into the battle. Jiang Tian entered the crowd of semi-god realm warriors of Great Ko family. His Kunpeng was extremely fast and his body was like an illusion. Everyone was shocked as they felt that Jiang Tian was going to attack them. They had no choice but to charge forward. Bang bang bang. A series of explosions rang out. The Green Dragon King's Li Shui was frozen by the sea-calming ice god. He was punched hundreds of meters away by Jiang Tian and smashed into Niu Duo Tian, who had just rushed over. Yun Zhongzi's divine sword skill was shattered by Jiang Tian's punch using the law of Earth Dragon. He crashed into Fu Heishui and everyone was in a mess. Yi Gongming backed off quickly, fearing that he would be caught in the chaos. The ground cracked and the entire crater and the base were smashed into pieces by the semi-god realm warriors. The broken crater and the broken walls floated up under the influence of the many laws of divine arts. The semi-god realm warriors were jumping among the rocks in midair. Sometimes they were upside down, 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 sometimes they were on the rocks and sometimes they were like beasts. You are using the weapon formula of the 9 great heavenly arts of the Ruins Emperor. How did you learn it? A semi-god realm Great Ko roared furiously. Hundreds of flying swords were snatched by Jiang Tian and stabbed into his divine treasure deity. He fell upside down. Bastard! How do you know how to set up formations? These scattered rocks have actually formed a formation to lock down the space. What sword skill is this? Bang bang bang, figures fell one after another. The broken crater and the broken pieces of the base flew higher and higher. On the top of the base, Jiang Tian and Yun Zhongzi were crossing each other. He used another law of Ice God to seal Yun Zhongzi's endless divine arts. He turned around and used Heaven Flipping Hand to strike Yun Zhongzi, causing him to vomit blood and fall to the ground. The roof of the base cracked open silently. Fu Heishui sneered sinisterly as he sneaked over. What greeted him was Jiang Tian's great divine art. Crystal sand Milky Way hanging above the blue sky. Behind Jiang Tian's back, the thick earth dragon emerged and roared. Thousands of Milky Way crystal sand descended from the sky along with his horrifying palm power, shattering Fu Heishui's space teleportation spell. Along with the Milky Way, Fu Heishui was slapped onto the ground. Boom! Countless rocks and broken walls fell from the sky. The ground trembled violently. The place where the semi-god realm Great Ko landed formed a huge palm print with a radius of 3 to 5 acres. You old scoundrel, you can't even withstand a single blow. Jiang Tian landed on the ground. He shook his clothes and smiled at the dumbfounded Yi Gongming. Senior, let's have a chat at your place. What should we name our army in the future? Chapter 1558. The Base of the Hu Family. Jiang Tian looked around and found that it was even shabbier than the other bases. There weren't many Dharma treasures or treasures. Yi Gongming must have given away a lot of ancient treasures to maintain the unity of the 7 pirate families. Although the 7 pirate families all came from the same branch of the ancient heavenly courts, they had different ancestors after all. After 10,000 years, they all had their own ideas and interests. Some kidnap, some dig up graves, some steal, some burn and kill, some plunder, and some plunder. If Yi Gongming hadn't mediated, they might have fought among themselves. Jiang Tian and Yi Gongming chatted for a while. The brothers of the Fu family, Tu Fei, Yun Zhongzi, Niu Duo Tian and the Green Dragon King groaned and screamed as they walked into the base of the Hu family. However, Jiang Tian had only slightly injured his body and divine treasures. He didn't move at all and would recover in a few days after taking some treasure medicines. Congratulations, Master. The divine plate rotated again and formed the true seal of the law of wood. You've become even more powerful. You defeated the 7 pirate families in one battle. Nice win. Ghost Wolf, Long Shengnen, Bai Muxue and Sword Master Outyan also came to greet Jiang Tian. They were quite happy. Do you still want to fight? Jiang Tian slightly nodded, glanced at the bandits and asked leisurely. If it weren't for the fact that we came from afar and our cultivation arts aren't compatible with the laws of heaven and earth, I might not have lost to you. Tu Fei was still stubborn, but his slightly trembling hands revealed his nervousness and fear at this moment. In fact, although he didn't want to admit it, he was already convinced in his heart. From the beginning to the end, Jiang Tian had only performed Dharma laws and true essence, but he had been beaten by a bunch of soul formation cultivators. No matter how one looked at it, Jiang Tian was more powerful than them. Ah Fei, Do you know that some of them reached the nascent soul level after I modified their cultivation arts in Penglai and made them compatible with the laws of heaven and earth? Jiang Tian smiled and said, I've heard about it. Is that true? Tu Fei stepped forward and bowed deeply. He winked and said, I wonder if the 9 moves of the tiger god can be fixed and perfected? Sure. Jiang Tian smiled faintly and immediately sent a message through divine sense. Tu Fei tried to comprehend it carefully, and he was suddenly enlightened. With a slight activation, the tiger deity in his body roared and resonated with the great Tao. Its power was more than 3 times stronger than before, and he couldn't help but applaud. Wonderful, wonderful! Fellow Taoist Taichu is truly a peerless heavenly being. After your modification, the power of the 9 stances of the tiger god has been multiplied. This lowly one has the confidence to twist the Ruins Emperor's head off and kick it like a ball. Senior, you seem to lack water-type materials to condense your laws. This lowly one has some. If Senior takes a fancy to them, you can use them as you wish. Everyone's hearts jumped, and the Green W King even walked forward and bowed respectfully as if he was seeing a god. Well said, well said. From now on we are good brothers. Jiang Tian smiled. Niu Duo Tian was also full of admiration for Jiang Tian. He smiled and said, Actually, I agree with fellow Taoist Taichu's positional warfare very much. We naturally can't give up so easily and give it to the Ruins Emperor. We need to establish an imperial court and open up fertile land. The ancestral teachings say that with food in hand, there is no need to panic. This lowly one supports fellow Taoist Taichu to be the leader of the bandits. Senior Taichu's sword Dao and void-tearing saber art, this lowly one's cultivation technique also requires your guidance and perfection. Yun Zhongzi said politely. Jiang Tian looked at the indignant Fu Huairan brothers and said, Fellow Taoists, your bloodlines are special. You seem to be from outside the realm. Of course, we are from the heavenly bat god lineage from outside the realm. Fu Huairan's face was filled with pride, but his face immediately wrinkled like a dried orange. He cried, Our ancestors accompanied Ao Emperor in his conquest of the universe. However, for 10,000 years, our race has been constantly pursued. In our generation, we are the only 2 left in our race. Jiang Tian was stunned. After a moment, he said worriedly, I didn't expect the 2 of you to be the descendants of a large race from outside the realm. However, you are brothers and both of you are male. Who will continue your lineage after you die of old age? Stop talking, the 2 bats said in unison. Once the 2 of you die, your lineage will become extinct. Jiang Tian gloated. I told you to stop talking. Fu Huairan was so angry that his hands trembled. He wanted to roast Jiang Tian and eat him, but he knew helplessly that he was no match for Jiang Tian. Brother, I almost died just now. I'm very worried. Let's go to the ruins of immortality and kidnap a few princesses and infanta to give birth to our children. Fu Heishui's face was covered in tears as he said with a trembling voice. Don't be so anxious. Jiang Tian laughed and said leisurely, I came from the ruins of immortality. Although I'm from Earth, I'm actually reincarnated. I've been to the Central Galaxy in my previous life. To tell you the truth, the Heavenly Bat clan is innumerable there. The female bats have sharp fangs in their mouths, and they look wild and gloomy. Their body hair is exuberant, and there are more females than males. It is common for several females to work with one male. He's indeed the reincarnation of a grand cultivator. How rare, how rare! Everyone's hearts trembled. They had long felt that Kong Teichu's divine powers and Dharma formulations were far more powerful than those of the Ruins Emperor and the locals of the deity ground. Is that true? There are so many females and so few males. That's great. The Fu brothers immediately went to Jiang Tian. One of them massaged his shoulders and the other massaged his legs. They said with a flattering smile, Senior, do you know the way to the Central Galaxy? Is it possible for you to act as a matchmaker for us? I want the ones with sharp fangs and wild body hair. The betrothal gifts and thank you gifts must be generous. We don't lack money. The Ruins of Immortality has a way to the central galaxy. Only the Ruins Emperor should be in control of it. Jiang Tian leisurely said, "You and your brother will follow me to the Ruins of Immortality and capture the Ruins Emperor. If you can't go to the central galaxy, will you lack female bats? Senior Tai Chu, you must take us there. We really can't go extinct. Senior Tai Chu, as long as you can matchmake us, you'll be our ancestor in the future." The Fu brothers immediately submitted, patting their chests as they promised passionately. Then Yi Gongming said seriously, "Everyone, let's not talk about that. You've seen how powerful Tai Chu is just now. In terms of power, he's much more powerful than us. In terms of achievements, he swept through the 4 worlds of Hai Lan, killed Divine Emperor Hanshi, and severely injured the Golden Crow and the other 2 guards." He cupped his hands and said, "The old man suggests that from today onwards, the 7 of us will respect Tai Chu and form the divine army of the heavenly courts. We'll respect him as the Lord of the heavenly courts and call him Heavenly the Arch Tai Chu. We'll listen to his orders and destroy the palace of the Ruins Emperor and kill the old dog. Do you have any objections?" "Senior, I'm willing." Yi Chun was the first to react. He trembled and bowed with cupped fists. "Emperor Jiang Tian, we're willing to respect Tai Chu. If he has any orders, we'll follow them." The masters of the other families and the soul formation overlords also knelt and bowed, saying loudly with reverence in their eyes. If one were to say that they still had doubts in their hearts after Jiang Tian had come to the immortal ruins and slaughtered his way through, then Jiang Tian had just fought against a dozen soul formation grand cultivators on his own in the ring-shaped mountain. They were completely convinced by his strength. Jiang Tian still had a slim chance of winning against the overlords of the Ruins of Immortality right then, but at least he was much more powerful than them. Not many of the billions of cultivators in the entire Ruins of Immortality, dozens of planets and dozens of planets would be able to defeat Jiang Tian. They were certainly convinced that such a peerless overlord was leading the 7 pirate families. Back then, the Ruins Emperor's palace promised high salaries and endless cultivation resources to appease the 7 pirate families, but they were unruly and ignored it. I never thought that Senior Tai Chu would be able to convince them after a fight. Below the hall, Long Xingnan looked at the great bandits and heroes in the Ruins of Immortality, whose fierce reputation could stop children from crying at night. They all bowed and knelt before Jiang Tian. She felt that she had never seen anything as wonderful as today. The 7 pirate families were equal in strength and they all had their own inheritances. No one was willing to submit to the others. For thousands of years, they fought on their own and were like a pile of loose sand. There were powerful overlords in the middle who wanted to unite them, but they didn't succeed. And yet, Lord Tai Chu did it all in one battle. He's really a peerless talent. Ghost Wolf knew the history of the 7 pirates. The more he thought about it, the more he found Jiang Tian to be powerful and extraordinary. He's the master of the heavenly courts and the heavenly the arch. He wants to fight with the Ruins Emperor's palace as an equal. The time of the final battle is not far away. Bai Mushua's heart was pounding and her blood was boiling. She looked at Jiang Tian with mesmerized eyes, wondering how such a strange man could exist in the world. They knew that a shining star was about to rise above the Ruins of Immortality. It was the most dazzling star under the starry sky, enough to make the Ruins Emperor pale in comparison. Chapter 1559. Brothers, there's no need to kneel. From now on, although our responsibilities will be different, we'll be on equal footing and call each other brothers. Jiang Tian was overjoyed as he raised his hands. He wanted to overturn the Ruins Emperor's palace and defeat the Ruins Emperor alone. As he collected more and more treasures, his cultivation level would become stronger and it would not be impossible for him to reach the mid-stage nascent soul realm. However, it would probably take 8 to 10 years. With the help of the 7 great bandits, it would be completely different. They had killed and plundered for many years and had accumulated a lot of treasures. Some of them were even passed down from the ancient heavenly courts. It would allow Jiang Tian to break through very quickly. They had many people, strongholds, spies and informants all over the ruins of immortality. They had a powerful intelligence agency. In addition, with Mushue's wide news pavilion, they could find the loopholes in the defenses of the ruins of immortality and go straight in to kill the important people. The 7 great bandits had tens of thousands of well-equipped troops. They were scattered in various forbidden lands and dangerous mountains. Although their discipline was extremely poor and they were scattered, they had rich battle experience. If they worked together, they could be called a tiger and wolf army and could carry out a large-scale battle. Even if that was nothing, at least they could destroy the ruins of Immortality Dynasty while Jiang Tian was in seclusion. That way, they could interfere with their attention and form a force to restrain them. Jiang Tian would definitely not be ambushed while he was in seclusion. They had to act according to their discretion. This was wartime, so they had to seize every second and keep everything simple. They did not hold any grand ceremony. After the bandits kowtowed to Jiang Tian and swore their loyalty, the new heavenly courts was established. Jiang Tian was the new master of the heavenly courts, known as the Taichu Heavenly the Arch. Heavenly the Arch, there are so many things to do after destroying the ruins of immortality. How should we fight next? Yi Gongming cupped his fists and asked. As soon as these words were spoken, all the bandits present looked at Jiang Tian, unable to take their eyes off him, revealing expressions of anticipation. In fact, that was also the topic that everyone was most concerned about. Although they had been attacking everywhere over the years, killing and plundering, they did not do it in a systematic way. They did it mostly to survive. Jiang Tian thought for a moment and said leisurely, I once searched for the consciousness of Divine Emperor Hanshi and the others. Now, the army of the ruins of immortality's ruins Emperor's Palace, the Academy's disciples, and the various grotto heavens were under the ruins Emperor's orders to descend to the lower realm. The Highland, the fertile lands, the desolate lands, the savage lands, and the other second-grade worlds are heavily fortified, with thousands of fortresses and incomparably tight security. At this time, however, the ruins of immortality are at their weakest. Therefore, our strategy should be to enter the ruins of immortality through the gate of heaven influence and start a massacre. Tu Fei rubbed his hands excitedly. You can kidnap a few concubines, queens, princesses, infanta, saintesses, and so on to reproduce. Fu Heishui said excitedly. That's not it. Humans were too ugly. It has no hair and is bald. Its face is flat and its teeth are short and thick. It is not clever at all. Fu Huairen said seriously. In the future, we'll follow Senior Tai Chu to the central galaxy to find our own kind. We'll keep ourselves chaste for our future wives. How could she be interested in them? We can kidnap a few nobles and ministers. Everyone was talking at once, extremely excited. They were still digging graves, robbing graves, burning, killing, and looting. Everyone was very good at it, but it had a completely different strategic significance. Everyone, let's do something big. Let's not be calculative about the gains and losses of a city or pool. We'll only wipe out the enemy's soul formation realm and raise the banner of our new heavenly courts. We'll get more people to follow us and join the war against the ruins emperor. Jiang Tian said calmly, we'll kill those loyal to the ruins emperor. We specialize in attacking and killing those loyal to the ruins emperor, especially the royal family and the nobles. We will scatter the treasures they contain and kill the rich to help the poor. We'll give the middle-of-the-road faction the feeling that they can get a share of the benefits by killing the ruins emperor. Gradually, more and more forces will join us in our sabotage operations. Their strength will decrease and eventually, we'll completely isolate the ruins emperor's lineage. That's a good idea. Yi Gongming said worriedly. But no matter what, we won't be able to shake the top soul formation realm cultivators of the ruins emperor's palace, the academy, and Sky Palace. Of course. Up to now, even if we join forces against the sword god or teacher of the ruins emperor's palace, we probably don't even have a 30% chance of winning. Jiang Tian said leisurely, but all of this is just a distraction. However, all of this is just a distraction to throw them into disarray. As for me, I'll take the opportunity to find treasures to break through to the nascent soul realm or even stronger. Heavenly the Arch, there are countless water elemental treasures in the water palace in the fallen immortal sea region. They should be useful. Green King immediately took out a jade slip. Light spewed out as a screen condensed in the air. Many patterns and words flickered, displaying the many water elemental treasures in the water palace's treasury for Jiang Tian to see. The grade isn't bad and they're considered treasures. But to me, they're still lacking. They're not divine or immortal materials. Jiang Tian checked carefully and finally smiled. These can only be used as supplementary materials. But just these alone can't help my water elemental golden core form the nascent soul. Green King looked disappointed, but he understood. Jiang Tian's breakthrough required the best cultivation materials. That was why Jiang Tian's strength was so powerful and heaven-defying. He was only at the golden core and nascent soul realm, but he could cross the chasm and fight soul formation realm cultivators, shocking the world. Bai Muxue stepped forward and said, I once deduced that there should be a water elemental treasure in the water moon grotto heaven from the ancient scrolls. However, we still don't know the exact reason based on the clues we have left behind. She had read many ancient books and found out the truth from bamboo slips, wooden slips, and even oracle bone inscriptions. There was a water elemental dharma treasure from ancient times. Its origin was mysterious, but it was very powerful. It didn't have the power of a grand cultivator, but it was more powerful than a Dao artifact. It had shown during the age of Dao damage and killed many soul formation grand cultivators and ancient saints. Later, it fell into the hands of the water moon grotto heaven. Every time it was activated, it required the combined power of thousands of cultivators in the grotto heaven and it rarely showed up. But 4,000 years ago, the Emperor of the Ruins tried to destroy the water moon grotto heaven, but they were forced to retreat. That was when it showed up. It's okay. There are plenty of heavenly treasures in the ruins of deity. We should be able to find what I need as we fight. Jiang Tian comforted. The water moon grotto heaven? When we reach the ruins of deity, we'll destroy them and look for it. If the people in the ruins of deity who didn't know the truth heard it, they would definitely scold Jiang Tian for being arrogant. The water moon grotto heaven was one of the 6 grotto heavens, along with the Tianmong grotto heaven. It had several soul formation cultivators. This heavenly grotto was already famous during the era of Dao damage. It had stood tall for tens of thousands of years without collapsing, and even now, it was still flourishing. Geniuses came out in large numbers, and nascent soul cultivators were as common as the rain. Its status and strength were above the ruins of deity, second only to the Academy, Sky Palace, and the Emperor of the Ruins. It was a forbidden existence that was respected by the world. But Jiang Tian wanted to destroy it. It was the biggest joke in the world. It was unbelievable. But everyone knew that Jiang Tian's words were equivalent to announcing the destruction of the water moon grotto heaven. Jiang Tian and the Heavenly Court's Recovery Divine Army formed by the 7 bandits could easily destroy the water moon grotto heaven. Jiang Tian was very confident about his next move. He said leisurely, once I reach the nascent soul level, I think I can defeat all soul formation cultivators. I'm not afraid of the sword god or the teacher. Good. We're relieved to hear that. Heavenly Emperor, let's not delay. Let's go. Yi Gongming laughed heartily. Chapter 1560. The soul formation cultivators of the ruins of deity have been showing off for so long. It's time to teach them a lesson. The Green Dragon King snickered. I, the King of Explosions, will turn the ruins of deity upside down. Wherever I go, not even a blade of grass will grow. Tu Fei looked like a bandit and was extremely destructive. I'm going to dig up the graves of the ruins emperor and dance on them. Ying Long said excitedly. Everyone was rubbing their fists, eager to fight. Then, Jiang Tian asked some questions and made some arrangements. Everyone worked together and came up with a few battle plans. After that, Jiang Tian didn't take action right away. Instead, he practiced with the semi-god realm warriors of the 7 great bandits. He modified his cultivation arts and made up for the flaws. He tried his best to make his cultivation arts fit the great Tao of this world. He even tried his best to surpass this world, fight against nature, and seize the fortune of the universe. There were many soul formation cultivators in the ruins of deity. Even though many of them had gone to the lower worlds and were guarding the second-level worlds, they still couldn't be underestimated. They had to be prepared. Under Jiang Tian's guidance, everyone felt as if they were listening to a deity art. They were immediately enlightened and their previous blockages were cleared. Bang bang bang. In a ring-shaped mountain strengthened by countless runes and talisman arrays, Jiang Tian flashed and jumped as if he were flying. He fought with them and unleashed his divine powers, Dharma laws and the Grand Tao. It was almost a real battle and he didn't hold back. In just a few days, the strength of the great bandit magnates rose steadily. It was as if there was no end to it. Everyone had great gains and comprehensions. There was a desolate base in that dimension called Planet Xiyuan where countless ancient books were stored. Apart from cultivation arts, there were also records of the war during the Age of Tao damage and even the wandering process in the deity ground. That heavy crystal gate had only been opened a few times in thousands of years. It was covered in dust and the talisman arrays were about to be worn out. At the moment, the gate was open for by Mushua. There were bamboo slips, jade books, golden cauldron inscriptions and oracle inscriptions. There were even knots to record things. Some were stained with blood, some were covered with holes and some were cracked and dim because of time. They had only been preserved after so many twists and turns. These documents were incomparably ancient. They had a history of tens of thousands of years. After experiencing the passage of time, they were covered in dust and were on the verge of rotting and collapsing. In addition, there were some that had been dug up by the gravedigger Ing clan. They came from the imperial tombs of the ruins of Immortality Imperial Court and were not considered magical treasures. They couldn't be used in battle, so they were also thrown here. These ancient documents were not of much use to the great Ko family. They were all old and rough men. Most of them had the bloodline of big demons. Their intelligence was slightly lower. They were good at murder, arson, kidnapping, extortion, and robbing, but they were not interested in reading books, studying, and calculating. If it weren't for the fact that there were records of their ancestors in the ancient scrolls, they would have burned it to the ground long ago. But to Bai Mushue, it was incomparably precious. This was first-hand historical data and had the highest credibility. It was like a huge treasure trove. Ancient forbidden grounds, hidden secrets, lost Dharma treasure resources, and even the various cultivation techniques of the ruins emperor's lineage were all listed within. If she studied it thoroughly, the worlds of the ruins of immortality would be almost transparent in Bai Mushue's eyes. Taking advantage of the time when Jiang Tian and the others were preparing, Bai Mushue immersed herself in it all day. She didn't leave the house at all. She flipped through the ancient books and imprinted the documents with jade slips. She was beautiful and pure. Her white clothes were stained with dust, and her nose was stained with dust. She was like a kitten that had crawled into the stove, but she didn't know it. Her face was calm like a beautiful jade carving. Her eyebrows were knitted and relaxed, and her clear eyes were very calm. She was carefully experiencing and comprehending. Her slender fingers were constantly making calculations. She was making mysterious deductions with the art of decimation that Jiang Tian had taught her. She wanted to see through all the fog of history and see the truth of the ruins of immortality. She wanted to become the advisor of Jiang Tian's operation. An unknown amount of time passed. Bai Mushue finally finished reading the last bamboo scroll and imprinted it into her portable jade slip for future use. She stretched her tired body and rubbed her hot temples. Then she pushed open the crystal gate and walked out. She immediately saw a shocking scene. Under the sparse stars and the pitch-black sky, a gigantic gate of heaven influence flickered with spatial fluctuations as it floated in the air. It was covered with talisman arrays and Taoist patterns that flickered with auspicious colors and brilliance. Everyone's aura was several times or even 10 times stronger than before. They all stood under the gate of sky influence. Although they were silent, their eyes were full of anticipation and excitement. Are they going to rush to the ruins of immortality and attack the root of the problem? Bai Muxue suddenly felt excited, but she was also a little worried. During this time, she only cared about studying the documents and didn't improve her strength. She was worried that Jiang Tian would treat her as a burden and leave her here or send her back to Penglai. Muxue, it's time to go. We're waiting for you, Jiang Tian said leisurely. He was wearing a black outfit and his long hair was draped over his shoulders. His divine body was glittering like a god. She felt that Jiang Tian's strength seemed to have improved a lot. That was probably the result of his practice with the soul formation cultivators. Heaven Emperor, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. Bai Muxue blushed. She suppressed the excitement in her heart, bowed deeply and walked to the end of the line. We're going to attack the soul formation cultivators of the ruins of immortality. Jiang Tian glanced at everyone and said coldly, this is a battle of attrition. It's also a decapitation operation and a show of strength. Our ultimate goal is to eliminate the soul formation cultivators who are following the Emperor of the Ruins. I want everyone to work closely and make sure there are no casualties. Do you understand? The bandits, Ghost Wolf, Long Shengnan, and Bai Muxue all felt their blood boiling. They roared and howled in anger. Their chi soared up to the sky as they followed Jiang Tian into the gate of sky-bearing. Destination, Danzhou, Tianyuan Province, Ruins of Immortality, the stronghold of the Demon Corpse Mountain. Yi Gongming was old and weak. He was too stubborn and couldn't be changed. His strength didn't increase and he had to stay in the Star Haiyuan dimension, so he didn't participate in this operation. Sword Master Outyin and Zhang Qingyang didn't have a chance to go either. They were too weak and would only be a burden. After all, it was a top battle and the goal was to kill the soul formation cultivators. They had already returned to the Penglai world through the Gate of Sky Influence and were ordered to build an army of cultivators to restrain the army of the ruins of immortality. Yi Gongming controlled the Gate of Sky Influence from the ancient heavenly court to adjust the coordinates on the array and said seriously, congratulations to the Taichu Heaven Emperor and fellow cultivators. Go straight to the heart of the ruins of immortality and take revenge for the ancient sages of the deity ground. He respectfully bowed to Jiang Tian and cupped his fists, his face full of hope. Congratulations to the Taichu Heaven Emperor and fellow cultivators. Go straight to the heart of the ruins of immortality and take revenge for the ancient sages of the deity ground. Many soldiers wearing cold armor and all of them were at the Foundation establishment level. They knelt down and said solemnly, Lord, you're the one who's going to die. We won't let you down. Jiang Tian bowed back. Boom. As Yi Gongming activated the Gate of Sky Influence, the dimension immediately shook and light flashed. The Gate of Sky Influence released endless light, as if it were twisting time and space. In the next moment, the Gate of Heaven Influence was like a brilliant star, flying toward the dimensional barrier in a seemingly slow but actually fast manner. When it fused with the dimensional barrier, countless space talisman arrays and Tao patterns shone brightly like the sun in the sky, illuminating the mountains and rivers. Many ring-shaped mountains and bases reflected the dazzling white light. Then, the door disappeared in a flash. It disappeared together with the gate. Planet Xin, this small world, regained its tranquility, as if this world had never existed. Chapter 1561. The Ruins of Immortality, Tianyuan Province, was located in the south of the Zhongyuan Province. It was located slightly further away from the core and was very prosperous. Danzhou was the capital of the province. It had a population of tens of millions, and cultivators and mortals lived together. The thick city walls were more than 300 meters tall and extremely steep. They were densely covered with sword marks and arrow holes. They were ancient, and there were even claw marks left behind by demonic beasts in ancient times. It was like a living history book, narrating the endless history. On the city walls, there were many guards. All of them were at the Foundation establishment stage, and their leaders were at the Golden Core stage. The mayor was even a peak nascent soul stage powerhouse. In the city, The buildings were tall, just like a modern city. Mortals rode on dragon horses, while cultivators rode on swords and flew in the air. It was very prosperous. There were at least dozens of quasi-god-level formations hidden. Vast magic power locked down the sky, as if holding up the 9 heavens and reaching down to the yellow springs. The power of the formations and restrictions was constantly circulating. It was as heavy as a boulder and indestructible. Even if a Soul Formation stage powerhouse attacked, it would take dozens of full-powered attacks to break it. The formations of the Black Rock City in the Ingzhou world that defended the ancient demon abyss, and the Winterfell in the Northern Ocean world that was said to be indestructible, were like clay sculptures compared to the guardian formation of this city. In the wilderness, apes and tigers roared. Savage beasts appeared and ferocious birds screeched in the sky, stirring up layers of clouds for hundreds of miles. Mountain ridges lay like old dragons, and ancient trees were wild. In the Devil Corpse mountain range 1,500 kilometers away from the city, miasma filled the air. Trees grew everywhere, covering the sky and the sun. It seemed that an ancient demon had fallen here, leaving behind a lot of demonic chi. It caused many demonic beasts and plants to mutate, eating and hurting people. It was very terrifying. As a result, there were very few people here. Even the guards of Danzhou were not willing to set foot here easily. It was considered a quasi-forbidden area. In a forest filled with black fog, there were strong spatial fluctuations. Roar! 2 Foundation establishment wing tigers that were hunting nearby were alarmed. They lowered their bodies and growled softly. Their claws pressed against the ground, revealing their bone hooks. Their eyes were full of vigilance and excitement. Suddenly, a ray of light flashed and turned into an ancient stone door. The light and auspicious colors dimmed. More than a dozen large men with ugly faces, savage auras, or ghostly auras walked out of the door. In the middle, there was a handsome black-clothed man in the lead, followed by 2 women. One of them wore soft armor, looking valiant and full of fighting spirit. The other was beautiful like a pearl emitting clouds. It was none other than Jiang Tian. The 2 winged tigers were immediately suppressed by everyone's violent aura. They trembled and crawled on the ground like little kittens. After Jiang Tian waved his hand, the winged tiger seemed as if it had been granted amnesty. It stood up on its hind legs and bowed 3 times before flapping its wings and leaving this place. In this city, there is a house for sword servants, the Imperial Sword Villa. According to the information he received, he was cultivating in seclusion here. Let's act according to the plan and execute the execution. If there are any changes, act accordingly. Jiang Tian calmly looked at Danzhou City in the distance. His eyes were cold, and an intense killing intent was slowly released. Thus, Heavenly Emperor! Many Soul Formation stage bandits bowed and cupped their fists. They concealed their energy and moved stealthily, disappearing on the spot instantly. Sword Servant, you teamed up with 2 semi-god realm warriors to kill me. I've said that I'll take revenge. The execution will start with you. Jiang Tian laughed and said, with your hot blood, sacrifice the flag for the rise of the heavenly court. I hope you're ready. The Imperial Sword Villa. Located in the north of Danzhou City, on the 3,000 meters tall Wenjian Peak, it covered an area of thousands of acres. The palaces were continuous and magnificent. They were shrouded in cloud-like spiritual chi and were faintly discernible. Treasure light and auspicious colors flickered as if the palace of an immortal had fallen to the mortal world. A 100 meters long waterfall fell into the back garden, forming a natural deep pool below. This was a blessed land that contained a medium-sized spiritual vein. Spiritual chi was constantly gushing out. With this, a heavenly sect or a heavenly lord family could be built and 10 foundation establishment stage cultivators could be nurtured. Nevertheless, all of this belonged to the sword servant alone. It was a gift from the ruins Emperor's palace. In Danzhou City and even in Tianyuan province, it was supreme. Even the governor could not fly here and had to kowtow on foot. After the sword servant returned to the ruins of immortality, he was not punished by the sword god. Although he did not kill Jiang Tian, he had severely injured him and brought back a large amount of information. His merits offset his faults. In the continuous battle with Jiang Tian and Yi Gongming in the Penglai world, he was also quite injured. Therefore, he was even given medicinal pills by the emperor. During this period, he had been in closed-door cultivation to heal his injuries. The healing medicinal pills of the ruins emperor's palace were excellent. His injured divine treasures had recovered, and his cultivation had also returned to its peak state. At this moment, the sword servant was under the waterfall in the back garden. In the pavilion above the flat pool, he was discussing the path with a group of family members and disciples. The winding path led to a secluded place. On both sides, there were man-made medicinal fields that were set up with spirit-gathering formations. Inside, the 9 bens heavenly ginseng was like an arm, and lingji mushrooms hung high on ancient branches. Among the branches, there were also many unknown herbs. They contained specks of brilliance, and the medicinal fragrance was elegant and refreshing. The sword servant sat in the middle and sipped his tea. His fingers tapped on his lap to the beat. Beside him, a beautiful concubine was playing the zither. She was dressed in thin clothes, and her graceful figure was faintly discernible. She came from a sect that was good at music. She was very beautiful, and her zither music cleansed the mortal world. Beside her, there were 7 or 8 disciples whose cultivation had reached the foundation establishment realm. They all held important positions in various parts of the ruins of immortality. Now, they had been summoned by him to celebrate his birthday. The disciples clearly remembered that the sword servant's birthday was still a month away. They did not know why it had been brought forward. However, the sword servant's status was extremely high. These foundation establishment cultivators rarely saw him, so they were naturally flattered and came in droves. At this moment, a purple-clothed girl walked in slowly and bowed. "Ancestor, Qing, is the distinguished guest from the Demon Flames sect not here yet? Don't tell me you're busy and can't come?" The sword servant leaned on a stone chair and said slowly. His voice was not loud, but it was full of majesty. After all, he was the sword god servant and had an extremely high status. In this place, he was comparable to a king or a governor. "Ancestor, senior son of the Demon Flames sect asked me to send a message to Qing. This time, he and sect master Mo will definitely come personally to celebrate the birthday. They have already set off and are expected to arrive in a day or 2 at full speed." The purple-clothed girl was born with bright eyes and white teeth. Her skin was like jade, and she was beautiful and cute. She was tall and curvy. When she heard the ancestor's question, she did not dare to be negligent and quickly bowed. Very good." The sword servant heaved a sigh of relief and nodded gently, revealing a look of admiration. This was his great-great-granddaughter. Not only was she beautiful, but she was also quite talented. She was clearly only in her teens, but she had already reached the foundation establishment realm. Based on her strength, she was qualified to be listed on the Ruins of Immortality War God list. However, she was a cultivator from the upper world, so she could not be listed. The princes of the ruins emperor's palace all favored her. It would not be a problem for her to become a prince's wife in the future. That's right. Grand Elder Son of the Demon Flames sect only held a high position because of Master's guidance. He has developed well over the years with the support of the Sword Villa. The ancestor has shown great kindness to him. How could they not come? A young disciple under the sword servant said softly. He was dressed in a brocade robe and had a jade-like complexion. The sword servant's real name was Tong Yujin. He revealed a solemn expression and said, "This is a 1,000-year birthday celebration. We must strengthen our defenses. Don't be afraid of wasting crystals and spirit stones. All protective arrays and restrictions are to be activated day and night. Do not stop." The sword servant's eyes twitched as he ordered coldly. In addition, strengthen the sentries and patrols of the villa by 3 times. Set up hidden sentries within 5 kilometers of the Sword Seek Peak, especially those cultivators with unknown identities. Keep a close eye on them and interrogate them. Contact the city lord and order him to enforce the no-fly order within 15 kilometers of the Sword Seek Peak. No cultivators are to fly on their swords. Otherwise, kill without mercy. Chapter 1562. Yes. Grandson, I'll do it now. A white-faced cultivator, who was the grandson of the sword servant and also the manager of the sword villa, immediately left after hearing the order. The pavilion was silent. Everyone looked at each other and felt a little uneasy as they listened to the music of the concubine. Everyone could tell that the sword servant wasn't in a good mood, but they didn't dare to ask or breathe too loudly. Ancestral patriarch, you're the disciple of the sword god. The sword villa has been thriving these years. In time, we won't even be afraid of the 6 grotto heavens. Only Tong Qing sat down beside the sword servant and said in a sweet voice, even though we've offended some sects, they're not qualified to compete with us. Just lie down on the ground and die. What are you worried about? Yes, master, don't worry. The sword villa is the most powerful in the province. No one dares to stir up trouble. Many disciples finally dared to speak. They were all comforting the sword servant. I've been feeling uneasy these days, as if something bad is going to happen. I'm a little worried. The sword servant smiled bitterly and said, anyway, there's nothing wrong with being careful. Don't go out so easily these days. He narrowed his eyes and a trace of vigilance flashed in his eyes. He was worried that Jiang Tian would come. If he were to say this out loud, it would simply be inconceivable. People would think that he was worrying for nothing. After all, Jiang Tian was still at the edge of Penglai. The ruins of deity and the many level 2 worlds were heavily guarded with soul formation cultivators. If Kong Teichu came, he would be courting death. Besides, the arrays in the city were strict. Even a fly would be sensed. Why would they be afraid of Kong Teichu? By the way, Qing, wake up your third uncle and accompany him to the birthday event. Remove the seal on the ice glass sword that the sword god gave him back then and let him carry it with him. The sword servant narrowed his eyes and suddenly said, What? Didn't you say that third uncle is at a critical stage of seclusion and can't be disturbed for 10 years? The ice glass sword is the family's heirloom. We can't use it easily? Tong Qinger's face was filled with shock when she heard this. The past was the past, and the present was the present. Although it is impossible for us cultivators to truly seek fortune, avoid calamity, and be able to predict the future, we are still able to do so. But sometimes, there would be some spiritual signs in his heart. It was still extremely effective. For the sake of caution, they had to be on guard. It would be better for an old man to think too much than for our imperial sword villa to really encounter a great calamity and have an accident. The sword servant said coldly, Yes, Patriarch. Qing will pass on the order now. Tong Qing saw that the ancestor was about to get angry. She was frightened and stood up to leave. Following that, Tong Yujin was still not at ease. He gave another 7 or 8 orders in a row, checking and filling in the gaps. Only then did he feel slightly more at ease. In fact, there were already over 100 foundation establishment cultivators gathered in the Imperial Sword Villa. They had arrived 3 days ago to celebrate the sword servant's birthday. The sword servant set up a banquet in the front yard. There were spirit fruits and delicacies, as well as immortal wine. They even invited many female cultivators from the dual cultivation sect to accompany them. They sang and danced gracefully, and the music was pleasing to the ears. All of this was done to prevent Jiang Tian from launching a sneak attack. The sword servant had a very bad feeling. Kong Teichu was a vengeful person. He might very well go to the ruins of deity. After all, he already had the gate of heaven influence. After Tong Qing went to the place where third uncle was in seclusion, she immediately returned to the pavilion in the back garden with a hint of joy. Patriarch, it's done. Third uncle has already broken through to the half-step soul formation realm. He's not far from it. But the sword servant finally relaxed a little at this moment and smiled with relief. Your third uncle is quite talented. There are many talents in the Imperial Sword Villa. In 100 years, it might be the 7th grotto heaven. In the future, we can send any disciple to the lower worlds to kill Kong Teichu. We'll tear him into pieces. Tong Qing wrinkled her cute nose and straightened her slender waist. Her plump breasts were even more prominent. She said in a sweet voice, "He must have used some tricks to be able to escape from you, patriarch, right? Otherwise, he's just a golden core and nascent soul cultivator from a remote village. He's no match for you." Hearing the 3 words Kong Te Chu, the sword servant's body trembled and there was a hint of fear in his eyes. But there were many juniors and disciples around, so he couldn't lower his prestige. He immediately smiled lovingly. That's right. Back then, he had the help of many bandits to attack the old man. Otherwise, I would have killed him with one slap. He also wanted to encourage Tong Ching, so he smiled lovingly. My Ching is very promising. She reached the peak of the foundation establishment level at the age of 18. Even Kong Te Chu can't compare. What's 7 great bandits? Digging up graves, kidnapping innocent women, wantonly indulging in sexual abuse, burning, killing, plundering, and committing all sorts of evil deeds. They're just a bunch of vicious dogs. Tong Ching said with a righteous face. If Ching joins the army one day, I'll definitely kill all of these rebels. I won't spare even a chicken or a dog. Ha! Sword servant, you're so shameless. You, Ban Shan and Haizi worked together to attack Kong Te Chu. How did it become the 7 bandits working together with Kong Te Chu to attack you? You're twisting the truth and spewing nonsense. Suddenly, there was a creepy howl. Suddenly, a cold wind blew and the lake water surged, creating huge waves. Fiend Chi rolled in the sky and dark clouds gathered. Ha! Little girl, you said we kidnapped women and wanted to cut off my head. I'm so scared. Hey brother, this girl is not bad. Her skin is soft and her meat is tender. She'll be delicious if you roast her to medium. The laughter was very strange. It sounded as if it came from several directions at the same time. A moment ago, it was far away. The next moment, it was right in front of them. However, they couldn't see anyone and even their immortal will couldn't detect it. Who's there? You only know how to sneak around in the dark. You're a scoundrel. If you have guts, come out and meet us. Many disciples and juniors were shocked. They stepped into the air and unsheathed their flying swords. They slowly circled around them and looked around vigilantly. Only the sword servant kept calm, but his 3-foot-long sword was also shaking slightly. It was obvious that he was ready to attack. Our lineage is indeed running out of guts. Only in the central galaxy can we find a partner. The other party's voice was light and casual, which made the sword servant and the others even more nervous. All of a sudden, a black light flashed. A strange man, bearing his fangs, covered in black hair, and with a pair of dark wings on his back, emerged from the rippling space with his head down and his feet up, as if he was hanging upside down from a golden hook. Sword servant, long time no see. An ominous glint flashed in his small bean-like eyes. He transformed into a violent black wind, shattering the void as he attacked the sword servant. It was Fu Heishui. A stinky bat dares to set foot in the sword-controlling villa. You're courting death. The sword servant shouted. The 3-foot-long sword broke into pieces and collided with Fu Heishui. Clang, clang, clang. Sparks flew in all directions and the pieces of space wriggled like dragons. Fu Heishui's body was strong and his movement technique was fast. He appeared and disappeared. He opened his mouth and screamed. The sound waves broke the space and rushed forward like thunder. The sword servant's body was ethereal and agile. His sword moved in the sky. The cold sword chi was unparalleled. The laws boiled like the sea and exploded with terrifying power. Ancestor, destroy this ugly bat. Tong Ching Er's protective talisman was released. She was forced to retreat. She shouted loudly and her eyes were full of hatred and disgust. Come, 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 destroy us. Little girl, you have tender skin, red lips, and white teeth. You're quite cute. Why is your mouth so cheap? Suddenly, another spatial fluctuation tore open, and Fu Huiren roared as he charged out. He was over 30 m tall, and his demonic chi surged while devil chi shot into the sky. He had a savage expression, and his protruding fangs were terrifying to the extreme. As soon as he appeared, the area within a radius of 10 miles was filled with rolling dark clouds, layer upon layer. Within the clouds, green thunder exploded like a winding dragon. The terrifying mana instantly enveloped the entire Imperial Sword Villa, bombarding and scouring without restraint. The terrifying aura caused the hearts of countless mortal cultivators in the city to tremble, and their guts to shatter. This is too terrifying. 2 soul formation cultivators are here. At this moment, the hosts and guests of the sword-controlling villa were dumbfounded. They were so terrified that they forgot to resist or even run away. Chapter 1563. Bang bang bang. As soon as he appeared, he had yet to make a move. The terrifying lightning and sound waves blew the concubine and the 3 building foundation stage disciples into pieces. Blood splashed everywhere, and broken bones flew everywhere. Don't kill me. As for Tong Qing, who was directly facing Fu Huairan, she was so scared that her face was as white as paper. Her legs were shaking as if she had seen a devil. Her pants were instantly soaked in urine. She had only stepped into the Foundation establishment realm not long ago. Facing a demonic god in the soul formation realm, she was simply not enough to fill the gaps between the opponent's teeth. Uncle just wants to talk to you about life and dreams. Don't cry, don't be afraid. Joining the army to kill enemies is not a problem, but don't suppress bandits. Fu Huairan bared his teeth and let out a strange howl. He reached out his hand and swept away the dozens of tiny flying swords released by the sword servants. Then, he grabbed Tong Qing, like an eagle grabbing a chick. He opened his mouth and let out a shrill cry, breaking the space and flying away. Fu Huairan is a semi-god realm cultivator after all. What's the point of bullying a little girl? The sword servant roared. His hair and beard stood on end as his sleeves fluttered in the wind. Fragments of the sword Dao crazily exploded, forcing He Shui Fu to retreat step by step. With a flash, he chased after Fu Huairan. I do bully little girls. What's wrong? If you have the guts, why don't you bite me? Fu Huairan soared through the air, flying off into the distance. Do you dare to fight me? The sword servant was furious. He knew what kind of fate his great-great-granddaughter would face if she fell into his hands. Sword light tore through the void to stop him. Are you kidding? Fighting with an old man is like having 1 foot in the coffin. I have absolutely no interest in fighting with you. Fu Huairan turned around and ran. His fleshy wings tore the space apart, and his tongue licked Tong Qing's face. The barbs scraped her tender skin until it was bleeding. Everyone was speechless. Fu Huairan was indeed a bad person. Considering the lifespan of a soul formation expert, the sword servant was still very young. Furthermore, he had a head full of black hair and did not have many wrinkles. He was completely different from an old man, but Fu Huairan was still teasing him. The sword servant was so angry that he almost went mad. His name shook the ruins of immortality, so who dared to disrespect him like this? He was absolutely furious. However, his great-great-granddaughter was in the hands of someone else, so he could only restrain himself. As he chased after Fu Huairan, he said solemnly, Fu Huairan, you have the bloodline of an ancient fiend god and are incomparably noble. Don't you feel ashamed to run away without fighting and abduct young girls? I don't think so. Fu Huairan didn't seem to care at all. He spoke lightly, making people feel that he had the strength but couldn't hit him. He flapped his wings and flew wildly without stopping for a moment. I am challenging you. The sword servant spoke with an oppressive aura. He stepped on the void, like a sword immortal descending from the 9 heavens. Fragments of sword Dao continuously erupted. I refuse. Fu Huairan said righteously as he sped forward. This old man is seriously challenging you. The sword servant was driven mad. His opponent's spatial speed had reached the realm of perfection, and he couldn't injure him at all. I'm also rejecting you very seriously. Please don't doubt my attitude, Fu Huairan said seriously. The sword servant was in a daze. These shameless bandits were truly shameless. Even if they didn't dare to fight, they still spoke in such a righteous manner. They didn't feel the slightest bit of shame and even looked so arrogant. Where did his sense of superiority come from? In the blink of an eye, they had chased for over 100 miles. That's right. Kill me if you have the guts. Fu Huairan stopped in front of me and smiled proudly, as if he was waiting for his sword servant to kill me. Today, I will kill you and avenge my descendants. Let go of my great-great-granddaughter. The sword servant was enraged. He flew into the air on his sword and chased after him. Bush, bush, bush. Both of them were at the soul formation realm. They were extremely fast, like shooting stars catching up with the moon. They left behind 2 streaks of light in the air with long tails, like 2 streaks of light, one black and one green. They tore through the sky and reached 100 miles in an instant. Do you think I can't kill you just because you entered the demonic corpse mountain range? The sword servant was ruthless. His Dao laws broke through the void, tearing apart the void. Like a violent storm, he attacked Fu Huairan. Your delicate great-great-granddaughter is in my hands. Be careful not to hurt her. Fu Huairan broke through the space with sound waves, appearing and disappearing from time to time. He always kept a distance of 25 miles from the sword servant. He seemed to be very relaxed and even kindly reminded him. Finally, the two entered the depths of the mountain range. Fu Huairan abruptly stopped in his tracks and hung upside down on a towering ancient tree with his head upside down and feet down. Fu Huairan, why aren't you running anymore? The sword servant thought that he had exhausted his Dharma power and sneered in his heart. The sword radiance of laws danced wildly and completely enveloped Fu Huairan. He shouted coldly, "Let go of my great-great-granddaughter." Didn't they say that the bandits were extremely vicious and murderous? Why are they so shameless like thieves? The guests in the courtyard were speechless. They thought that the crisis was over and were about to leave. Ha! I'm the vicious one who killed people. Let's have a try. At this time, an abnormally tall and wild man with tiger stripes on his forehead suddenly appeared in the sky above the courtyard. He was carrying an array disc the size of a millstone. Tu Fei, the king of destruction. Wherever Tu Fei goes, not even chickens or dogs are left alive. Everyone was horrified. Stepping on their swords, they leaped up and down like grasshoppers in a bonfire, fleeing in haste. But you all know my name. It's your honor to die in my hands. Tu Fei's eyes flickered. He was extremely ferocious. The exploding crystal array disc smashed down and exploded. Boom! A giant mushroom cloud rose into the sky, and the palace was shattered like a sand sculpture under a heavy hammer. Rocks were crushed into powder, and countless defensive magic formations and defensive spells were torn into pieces like paper. The entire area within a radius of 100 miles was quaking. That was an array disc that was almost a Dao artifact. Jiang Tian had taught it how to make it, but it was more powerful than a Dao artifact and was almost as powerful as a sacred artifact. It was equivalent to at least 10 soul formation cultivators attacking together and burning their divine powers. Most of the cultivators in the courtyard were at the foundation establishment level. There wasn't even a half-soul formation cultivator. How could they withstand it? It was like an ordinary person facing a nuclear weapon. They were instantly turned into powder. Even their divine souls, golden cores, nascent souls, protective treasures and dharma treasures were crushed into the tiniest particles. Who dares to invade the sword villa? Do you want to die? Tong Qinger's third uncle had sword-like brows, starry eyes, and an extraordinary bearing. He just flashed out from his closed-door cultivation and cursed exasperatedly. He didn't even have time to take out the ice-glass sword. Before he died, his face was still full of shock and unwillingness. He couldn't understand how the sword villa offended such a terrifying being. At this moment, the entire Danzhou city was shaking violently as if a hurricane had passed through, destroying everything in its path. Some cultivators and guards who were observing from 10 miles away were knocked off their feet by the airflow and spat out blood. When the sound stopped and the smoke and dust settled, the 3,000-meter-tall sword-seeking peak and the sword villa had disappeared. Not only were they razed to the ground, But there was also a huge bowl-shaped pit with a radius of 10 miles. The sword servant had already sensed everything with his powerful spiritual sense. The soul tablet on his waist made a series of beeping sounds. The light that represented the vitality of his descendants' souls was extinguished, leaving only Tong Ching-er's light that was still shining. Seeing this, the sword servant cried blood and tears. He was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He roared, "Despicable! How dare you lure the tiger away from the mountain, destroy my foundation, and destroy my family? I will annihilate the great Ko family." This was a great destruction. The entire sword villa was wiped out. None of the cultivators escaped. They were all dead. Among them were the sword servant's descendants. They were all blown to ashes, which meant that the sword servant's family was wiped out. Fu Huairan smiled but didn't say anything. He was very calm. "Oh no, I've been ambushed." The sword servant was suddenly shocked. He was alarmed and his expression changed drastically. Chapter 1564. Annihilate the great Ko family? How arrogant! Do you have what it takes? Suddenly, a mighty and dignified figure soared through the sky and flew over. Profound water coiled around him while flood dragons roared with the laws of flood dragons around him, and azure-colored treasured light gushed out like a rising radiance. He had a towering horn on his head, and his entire body was covered in azure scales. He was like a god, and his imposing aura swallowed a myriad of kilometers and suppressed the world. Green Flood Dragon King. The sword servant was shocked and his face turned pale. He quickly withdrew the sword Dao and circled around his body to defend himself. "Don't you like to be besieged? Today, I'll let you have a taste of being besieged." A withered and skinny old farmer laughed and walked over lazily. His muscles were bulging and his divine treasures were trembling. The godly bull god roared and surrounded by Dharma. His aura soared into the sky. He stomped on the ground and the mountains shook. Nyo Duo Tian. The sword servant's cold sweat poured down like a waterfall. His legs trembled and he staggered, almost falling from the sky. "My friends, why are you still talking? Send him to hell." A giant white crane flapped its wings and flew over. It spoke in human language and landed behind the sword servant. It then turned into a handsome man wearing a feather robe and a star crown. He held a crane beak in his hand and carried a long sword with a white scabbard on his back. He looked handsome and ethereal like an immortal. His eyes were cold to the extreme. The bone-chilling sword chi swept over and made the sword servant's hair stand on end. Yun Zhongzi had also arrived. "You don't know how to cooperate. I said I would kill him. It's a long-cherished wish. Since you guys are so close, I can only use the 9 moves of the Tiger God." Tu Fei also arrived. He put away the exploding crystal. He held the tiger claw saber in his left hand and the tiger tail whip in his right. He looked majestic like a tiger out of its cage. To avenge Tai Chu, of course, I have to make sure nothing goes wrong. Nyo Duhyun laughed and puffed out green smoke from his big nostrils. Fu Huairan was in the front, Nyo Duotian was on the left, the Green Dragon King was on the right, Yun Zhongzi was at the back, and Tu Fei was at the top. Some of them had devilish looks, some were bearing their fangs, some were muscular, and some were covered in green scales. The gods roared and extremely powerful Dharma laws intertwined. They surrounded the sword servant like an inescapable net with endless power. Clouds rolled in 1,000 miles in the sky. Even a top soul formation cultivator could be killed by them. How did Kong Teichu find so many semi-divinity realm bandits? Also, none of them are weaker than our Grand Patriarch. It's too scary. At this moment, Tong Ching-er was horrified. Her beautiful face lost all color, and her curvy and delicate body trembled slightly. Her breasts rippled violently. "Sword servant, you've finally come. It's time to settle the score." At this moment, Jiang Tian finally showed up. He leaned lazily on a mountain rock and said leisurely. Behind him, Ghost Wolf stood respectfully. Long Xingnan was holding a fruit plate full of spirit fruits. and Bai Muxue was holding a pot of thunderfire wine, pouring it into Jiang Tian's jade cup. At this moment, old demon Jiang was enjoying himself. The beauties were his slaves, the saintesses were his servants, and the divine generals were his servants. Kong Teichu, so it was you who set me up and killed my family. Shameless, despicable. The sword servant's eyes twitched, and he felt cold all over. His heart fell into the abyss, and his scalp almost exploded. Jiang Tian's strength was on par with his. Now that he had the help of so many semi-divinity realm warriors, there was no way he could survive. Despicable, despicable, set you up. Childish, what a joke. Jiang Tian sipped the thunderfire wine, smacked his lips and smiled leisurely. This is a war of life and death. Everything is done with the goal of eliminating the enemy. You were competing with your sect back then. Why do you care about the rules? Jiang Tian's eyes were filled with mockery. He raised his hand and pointed at him with a smile. You are the servant of the sword god, a semi-divinity realm warrior who has been through hundreds of battles. How can you say something so childish? You really disappoint me. Senior Taichu, please don't kill me. We are willing to follow you and be your servants. To be honest, my talent is not bad. I have already reached the foundation building level and I am still a virgin. At this moment, Tong Qing'er's beautiful eyes moved gently as she spoke in a soft voice. At first, she thought that since Jiang Tian was an unparalleled fiend who had stirred up bloody storms and slaughtered thousands of miles away, he would definitely look strange and ferocious. But he never imagined that Jiang Tian was actually so handsome and refined, as if he was the son of a god that had descended to the mortal world, an immortal that had descended to the mortal world. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Jiang Tian's charm was no less than the princes of the ruins Emperor Palace and the children of Grotto Heavens. When she saw Long Xingnan, who was weaker than her, beside Jiang Tian, she was immediately envious and had an idea. Hearing that, Long Xingnan immediately curled her lips and looked alert. She thought that Tong Qing'er was so shameless. How dare she covet the Taichu heavenly emperor and flirt with him in public? Bai Muxue's beautiful eyes flickered as she looked at Jiang Tian nervously. In fact, even though they were both women, she had to admit that Tong Qing'er was very beautiful. She was dressed in purple, and her figure was curvy. Her legs were long and slender, and her skin was fair. Her waist was slender and graceful, and her chest was high. Her skin was as smooth as fine jade, and she had an unruly and adorable aura. Moreover, her foundation was not bad. She had already stepped into the foundation establishment realm at such a young age. She was much stronger than Bai Muxue. At this moment, Tong Qing'er purposely puffed out her proud chest to show off her assets. She revealed a shy expression as if she was at his mercy. She was also quite confident that Jiang Tian would not be able to resist her fatal temptation. After all, many members of the royal family were fond of her and treated her like a goddess. Unexpectedly, she only saw boundless coldness in Jiang Tian's eyes, as if they were ice that would not melt for thousands of years. Tong Qing'er suddenly felt a bone-chilling cold, and her heart was filled with extreme fear. She heard Jiang Tian's mocking voice, as if it came from above the 9 heavens. You ugly freak who pees everywhere, and you want to be my servant? Why don't you look in the mirror and see how terrible you are? Jiang Tian's every word was like a hammer that smashed into Tong Qing'er's heart, making it difficult for her to breathe. Jiang Tian said disdainfully, Foundation establishment talent? What kind of joke is this? You are just a bottle of spiritual medicine. Your cultivation was forcefully piled up by spiritual medicine. Tong Qing'er's face had already lost all color. Tears were flowing down her cheeks, and she was so scared that she was about to pee on the spot again. Jiang Tian glanced at the sword servant leisurely and said with a smile, Sword servant, didn't you say that we killed your entire family? There is still one who is not dead. Since you are framing us, we will not bother to refute. Let's grant your wish. In the next moment, Jiang Tian's face froze. He smiled and said, Fu Huairen, don't you like to eat raw? This bottle of spiritual medicine is very nutritious. But Fu Huairen bit his body, and his head suddenly expanded to the size of a millstone. He opened his mouth, and his teeth were like sawtooth blades. Amidst Tong Qing's pleas and the sword servant's screams, he swallowed Tong Qing. He chewed with crunching sounds. The friction between the teeth and the bones made a crisp sound that made people's hearts palpitate. Even the clothes were spat out from the corner of his mouth. At this moment, Fu Heishui came sneakily. Seeing this scene, he said gloomily, "Brother, you always like to eat raw. Actually, I prefer to eat cooked. Medium well is the best. Roasting on the fire until oil drips out, the inside is very tender, and the taste is very good. Why do you want to eat raw? You are dirtying your body, aren't you? Medium well is not good. There is no freshness. Eating raw is the best. It will squeak when you eat it. It is the most delicious," Fu Huairen said leisurely. "Besides, this is an order from the Taichu Heavenly Emperor. How can I not carry it out immediately?" "You are wrong. Roast her until she is medium well and let her suffer endless pain. Only then will the sword servant be heartbroken and the Lord be happy," Fu Heishui said leisurely. Fu Huairen was stunned. Unfortunately, she had already entered his stomach. "Kong Taichu, you are in cahoots with demons and instructing them to eat their own kind. You are a demon on earth." The sword servant's eyes were about to crack as he shouted at the top of his lungs. "Those who are kind to me are kind, and those who are evil." Jiang Tian was completely at ease. His face was as calm as an ancient well without ripples as he casually said. He said leisurely, "Your narrow-minded view of clans is the most unacceptable. You descendants of the Ruins Emperor are also humans. However, in the era of Dao damage, you attacked the natives of the deity ground who are also humans. You occupied my territory. Do you think I should treat you as good friends? Kong Taichu, I will fight you to the death." Hearing this, Tong Yujian seemed to be roaring with extreme anger. The law of sword rumbled as it charged towards Jiang Tian. Suddenly, a crystal talisman at his waist flashed, and he shot towards the mountain wall behind him. He suddenly disappeared as though he had passed through the mountain. It's a rare Taoist artifact Earth Escape crystal talisman. Seeing this, everyone's expression changed slightly. Where can he run to? Jiang Tian's expression did not change. He picked up the purple grape that Long Shengnan had given him and stuffed it into his mouth. Suddenly, an angry roar came from the thick soil of the mountain wall. "Old man, you stepped on my foot." With a loud rumble, the ground rose and collapsed 15 kilometers away as though an earth dragon was rolling. It was as though the sea had turned into mulberry fields. Suddenly, rubble flew through the air. The mountains shook, and trees were sent flying. Tong Yujian was kicked by a strange man. He flew back like a rubber ball. It was Ying Long who was hiding underground. He had attacked at that moment. Great wall of sword aura. The sword servant's clothes were ragged. He was instantly surrounded. Suddenly, a 3-foot-long sword jumped out from behind him. He held the sword in his hand and burned his god's origin. He raised his eyebrows and slashed with his sword. Chapter 1565. The sword radiance soared like the sun in the sky, shining in all directions. All of a sudden, a majestic rectangular city appeared. It was about 1,000 feet long and was completely formed by natural laws. It revolved around the city and surged outwards. It instantly dispersed the surging demonic chi and crushed the mountains. It suppressed everyone and rampaged about. That was the unique skill he had learned in his life. It was taught by the god of swords and was even more powerful than the fragments of swordsmanship. He had never used it successfully before. At that moment, he was surrounded and his life was hanging by a thread. He stimulated his potential and made up his mind to create the Great Wall of Sword Aura. The Great Wall of Sword Aura was formed by the laws of Sword Aura. It was protected by the Great Wall of Sword Aura and was full of unyielding fighting spirit. The Great Wall of Sword Aura was extremely solid. Every brick and stone was lifelike. There were even countless shadows of armored soldiers and white-robed swordsmen jumping and roaring on it. "Raise your swords!" As the horn was blown, there was a thunderous shout. Within the Great Wall of Sword Chi, the soldiers and cultivators either drew their bows and arrows and shot into the sky, or threw their halberds like javelins. Tens of thousands of flying swords and all kinds of weapons left the top of the city wall and pierced towards the crowd. The sword chi was brilliant, indestructible, and incomparably sharp. It poured out like a flood breaking through a dam. Nothing in the world was more spectacular than that. The Great Wall of Sword aura was comparable to that of hundreds of nascent soul cultivators, tens of thousands of golden core cultivators and foundation establishment cultivators. The sword servant trembled after that attack. He stepped back 3 steps and spat out a mouthful of blood. But he didn't look upset. Instead, he looked delighted. He thought that was the most powerful attack he had ever made in his life. Even half of the gods had been burned and paid the price with blood. It could definitely injure the soul formation cultivators and open a bloody path for them. Interesting. Let's see if your Great Wall of Sword aura or my Crane Divine Sword is more powerful. Yun Zhongzi raised his sword-like eyebrows and shouted. A long sword covered with feather patterns suddenly jumped out of the white scabbard on his back and fell into his hand. Yun Zhongzi's handsome face was overflowing with murderous intent. Dao patterns appeared under his feet, making him look like a divine white crane. His body turned into a white light, and with a shake of his long sword, he pierced toward the Great Wall of Sword Chi. Instantly, white cranes with long legs, long necks, long beaks, red crowns, and snow-white feathers appeared in the sky. There were a few thousand of these white cranes, and when they appeared, they were ethereal and ethereal. They stood tall and slender like the most beautiful dancers as they flew up and down while emitting light cries. Their movements were graceful, elegant, and pure, and they were like immortal birds from the primeval times. All of a sudden, it let out a long roar that reverberated through the clouds. The sound of thunder shook the heavens. Their wings were folded on both sides of their bodies, and their legs were stretched straight backward. Their bodies were almost in a straight line, and with their beaks as the tip, they attacked forward. From this perspective, it was like a snow-white sword body, sparkling and shining as it pierced through the air. In reality, its long beak was indeed glowing. It was different from ordinary white cranes. Its beak was snow-white and sparkling, releasing sword energy. Like a flying sword. At this moment, the corner of sword servant Tong Yujian's eyes twitched as he let out a soft cry of surprise. He suddenly felt uneasy. These immortal cranes were using their bodies as swords. They were completely formed by the immortal crane Great Tao and laws as they swept through the sky. Their entire bodies were surrounded by brilliance, and sword rays shot out. They were invincible. In the sky, the white cranes were too fast. They surpassed the speed of Ghost Wolf and the Fu brothers, and were chasing the speed of Jiang Tian's Kunpeng. They were no different from flying swords. In the sky, the two types of sword energy laws collided heavily. Sparks flew everywhere, and the cracks in the space were colorful. Under the violent attack of the immortal crane divine swords, the Great Wall of Sword Chi only lasted for 3 seconds before it collapsed and exploded inch by inch. How is this possible? Your Great Tao and laws are completely compatible with this world. Tong Yujin roared with unwillingness and fear. However, after the white crane divine swords destroyed the Great Wall of Sword Chi, they were almost completely exhausted. They let out an unwilling cry, and cracks covered their bodies as they shattered into pieces in the sky. Fortunately, at least help me block one attack. Tong Yujin did not say anything else. His sword light pierced through the sky and shot into the distance. Are you running away? How arrogant! Niu Duotian let out a loud roar. His aura surged like a bull as he stomped on the ground, causing the ground to crumble. Like a demonic bull plowing through a courtyard, he threw out a punch. His divine fist was unparalleled. The violent force was like a broken dam, and it contained fragments of the Great Tao. The demonic bull's laws lingered and formed countless shadows. It was incomparably domineering, and it could swallow mountains and rivers. Clang! Tong Yujin's protective sword light exploded under the boundless and irresistible force. Like a scarecrow, he was blasted 10 miles away and heavily smashed into the mountain wall. At this moment, his clothes were ragged, and there was a fist mark on his chest. His body was covered in blood, and there were a few fine cracks on his divine treasures. Bullying the weak with numbers, what kind of ability is that? The sword servant was furious. He roared and rushed out from the mountain rocks. Divine blood splattered everywhere. His sword pierced through the sky, and the dense sword chi like a long river rushed toward Nyodung. As the sword god servant, he was no different from his disciple. He had a high position in this world, and countless people respected and revered him. But he was ambushed by Jiang Tian, and his family was annihilated. Now, he was surrounded by many bandits, and he was beaten black and blue. At this moment he was furious. He was mad with hatred, and he was unwilling to admit defeat. Nyodwitian's demonic bull laws belonged to the strength class. It was as powerful as a mountain, and it could move mountains and fill seas. It could destroy cities and countries, but it was not fast. Just as the sword chi, sword light, and laws were about to reach him. "Old bull, let me help you." Suddenly, Fu Heishui flew over and grabbed him. With a strange howl, the sound wave blasted out and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Boom, boom. The place where Nyo Duotian was standing was filled with rubble. A mountain that was thousands of feet tall was flattened. The sword light and laws lingered for a long time. The veins on the sword servant's forehead were throbbing. He was not afraid of those divine transformation realm warriors if he fought them alone. But when they worked together, their power was not simply stacked, but increased by 100 times. Basically, he had no hope of escaping. "I don't know how long I can last. I hope my friends from the ruins Emperor Palace can come and save me." The sword servant's eyes were filled with hatred as he crushed the voice transmission jade talisman. That voice transmission jade talisman was very important as it reached the heavens. The ruins Emperor Palace would sense it immediately and send out more than 10 divine transformation realm warriors, and even the royal divine transformation realm warriors. The wearer could not crush it easily even if he was in danger of dying. He could only crush it when facing enemies that could destroy the world. As long as the 10 divine transformation realm warriors of the ruins Emperor Palace come, you won't be able to kill me. You might even have to stay here. After crushing the voice transmission jade talisman, the sword servant's eyes turned cold. Without another word, he took out a protective bell, wanting to cover himself. "Even if we want to bully you with numbers, what can you do?" Two-phase tiger tail whip came crashing down from the sky. The tiger god's law rumbled and descended from the sky. Shadows of mountain peaks appeared one after another, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Clouds came from dragons and winds came from tigers. Apart from the tiger god laws, there were also astral winds and other wind elemental laws. They were cold and could break one's divine soul. A wisp of them could easily kill a Foundation Establishment realm warrior, and even severely injure a golden core. "Open!" The sword servant roared. The purple golden bell floated in the air and emitted thousands of purple beams of light. It covered the top of his head and clashed with the tiger tail whip. The bell rang and the purple bell trembled. Countless purple clouds spewed out. The sword servant was injured. His skin was torn and his flesh was bleeding. The purple golden bell was a superior grade defensive doctrine artifact made of Tao Calamity purple gold. It was extremely expensive and rare. It was one of the top materials in this world. Ban Shan had personally led the Divine Craftsman Hall to make the purple golden bell. Even the sword god of the ruins Emperor Palace had injected a wisp of his doctrine fruit into it. Once it was used, it was equivalent to blocking an attack for an upper-level divine transformation realm warrior. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.